1. The immortal jellyfish. Somewhere in the warm and drifting waters of the world's oceans, there lives a creature no larger than the nail of your smallest finger, and it has quietly solved the one problem that every other living thing has been forced to surrender to. It does not have to die of old age. Its name is Turritopsis dohrnii, though most people who have heard of it at all know it by a simpler and stranger title. They call it the immortal jellyfish. And the astonishing thing is that the title is not exaggeration or metaphor. It is, as far as science can tell, a plain description of what this small and almost invisible animal is able to do. To understand why this is so extraordinary, it helps to remember the shape of every other life we know. A thing is born, it grows, it matures, it ages, and eventually it declines and dies. This arc feels less like a rule and more like a law, as fixed as gravity, as certain as the passage of time itself. Everything that has ever lived has moved in one direction along it, from beginning toward end, and no amount of wishing or striving has ever let a creature walk back the way it came. Except, it turns out, for this one. The immortal jellyfish, when it is threatened, injured, starved, or simply grown old, does something that ought to be impossible. It goes backward. The life of an ordinary jellyfish begins as a tiny larva, which settles onto a rock or the seafloor and becomes a polyp, a small stalk-like form fixed in place. From that polyp, young jellyfish eventually bud off and swim away as the free-floating bell-shaped adults we recognize, trailing their delicate tentacles through the water. This is the normal one-way journey, from polyp to adult, and for nearly every jellyfish it ends the way all lives end. But Turritopsis dohrnii has found a door where there should only have been a wall. When conditions turn against it, the adult jellyfish can settle back down, collapse its body, and transform itself entirely back into a polyp, beginning the whole cycle over again. The process by which it does this is what makes biologists lean in with genuine astonishment. It is called transdifferentiation, and it means that the jellyfish's already specialized cells, the cells that have committed to being muscle or nerve or the tissue of the bell, can somehow reverse their commitment and become other kinds of cells entirely. Imagine, in human terms, a heart cell deciding it would rather be a bone cell, or a neuron unwinding itself back into an unformed cell that could become anything at all. In our bodies, this essentially never happens. Our cells, once specialized, stay that way. But the immortal jellyfish does it as a matter of routine, rebuilding its whole self from the material of its aging body, and stepping fresh into youth again. In principle, there is no built-in limit to how many times it can do this. An ordinary creature has a certain number of years allotted to it, a candle that burns down and gutters out. This jellyfish is more like a candle that, whenever it nears its end, quietly reforms itself into a new and unlit candle, ready to burn again. Under the right conditions, and safe from the ordinary dangers of the sea, a single individual could in theory cycle between adult and polyp and adult again, over and over, without any natural end at all. The clock that ticks in every other living thing has, in this one small animal, been fitted with a hand that can turn the other way. It is important to be honest about the limits of this immortality, because the real story is stranger and more delicate than the myth. The immortal jellyfish is not invulnerable. It can still be eaten by predators, and it very often is. It can be killed by disease, or by conditions too harsh even for its remarkable talents. In the crowded and hungry ocean, most of these jellyfish die perfectly ordinary deaths long before their special ability ever comes into play. What they possess is not a shield against dying, but a release from one particular kind of death, the slow decline of age that the rest of us think of as simply inevitable. They can be killed. They just do not have to grow old. And yet even that narrow miracle is enough to unsettle everything we assume about how life must work. We have long treated aging as a fixed cost of being alive, the unavoidable price of a body that runs and therefore wears down. This tiny creature suggests, quietly, that the price is not truly fixed, that somewhere in the logic of cells there exists at least one way to reset the count. Scientists study it not because they expect to make human beings immortal, but because it hints that the boundaries we thought were absolute might, in some corners of the living world, be more like suggestions. There is something humbling in the fact that this discovery belongs not to some vast and mighty animal, but to a speck of drifting jelly you could hold in a drop of seawater. It carries, in its almost transparent body, an answer to a question that human beings have asked in every culture and every century. How might one escape the ending that comes for all things? The immortal jellyfish does not know it holds such a secret. It simply drifts and feeds, and when its time seems near, it folds itself back into youth and begins again, an endless quiet loop in the dark water, a small living argument that the one-way road of life may have, somewhere, a hidden turn. 2. Tardigrades. If you were asked to design the most indestructible animal imaginable, you would probably not arrive at something that looks like a chubby, eight-legged bear the size of a grain of sand, waddling clumsily through a drop of water. And yet that small and faintly comical creature, the tardigrade, sometimes affectionately called the water bear or the moss piglet, is very likely the toughest form of life that has ever existed on this planet. It can endure conditions that would annihilate almost anything else, conditions so extreme that they exist nowhere on the ordinary surface of the Earth. It has survived, quite literally, the vacuum of open space. Tardigrades are tiny, most of them less than a millimeter long, and they live nearly everywhere. They are found in the deep sea and on mountaintops, in hot springs and beneath layers of ice, in the soil of forests and, most commonly of all, in the thin films of water that cling to patches of moss and lichen. You have almost certainly walked past millions of them without knowing it. Under a microscope they are strangely endearing, plump and slow, moving on stubby clawed legs, feeding on the fluids of plant cells and tiny organisms. In their ordinary daily lives they are unremarkable. It is only when the world around them turns hostile that their true nature reveals itself. When a tardigrade's environment dries out, or freezes, or otherwise becomes unlivable, it does something remarkable. It pulls in its legs, expels most of the water from its body, curls into a tiny dehydrated ball, and enters a state called cryptobiosis. In this form, sometimes called a ton, its metabolism slows to a whisper, dropping to a fraction of a percent of normal, so low that it can be difficult to say whether the creature is truly alive at all. It is not sleeping, not hibernating in the way a bear does. It has, in a sense, paused itself, suspended somewhere between life and death, waiting. And it can wait for an astonishingly long time, years, and by some accounts far longer, until water returns and it swells back to life as though no time had passed. It is in this suspended state that the tardigrade becomes nearly impossible to destroy. Scientists, curious about the limits of this endurance, have subjected them to a gauntlet of horrors. They have been frozen to temperatures near absolute zero, colder than the deepest cold of interstellar space, and revived. They have been heated well past the boiling point of water. They have been exposed to pressures far greater than those at the bottom of the deepest ocean trench, and to bursts of radiation that would kill a human being many times over. Through all of it, a portion of them have simply come back, unfolding from their tons and walking away as if nothing had happened. Each of these extremes, on its own, would be lethal to almost any other animal, and yet the tardigrade in its dried state seems almost indifferent to them, as though the ordinary rules of what can and cannot be survived simply do not apply to it. The most famous demonstration of all came when tardigrades were carried into orbit and exposed, deliberately, to the open vacuum of space. There, they faced not only the total absence of air and pressure but also the raw, unfiltered radiation of the sun, which alone is enough to sterilize most living things almost instantly. When the samples were returned to Earth and rehydrated, some of the tardigrades revived. They had survived the void. As far as we know, they are the only animals ever shown to endure direct exposure to space and life. A creature you need a microscope to see had done what no astronaut could do unprotected for even a moment. How is such toughness possible? Scientists are still working out the full answer, but several pieces have emerged. When tardigrades dry out, they produce special proteins that seem to turn the interior of their cells into a kind of glass, a stable matrix that cradles and protects the delicate molecular machinery of life, holding everything in place until water returns. They also possess unusual proteins that appear to shield their DNA from damage, wrapping the genetic material in a protective embrace against radiation and cosmic assault. In their paused state, with so little happening inside them, there is simply very little for the extremes to break. They have survived by learning, in effect, how to become almost nothing, and then how to become themselves again. There is a strange comfort in the existence of the tardigrade, and also a strange perspective. These creatures have been on Earth for well over 500 million years. They were here before the dinosaurs, and they watched, in their unbothered microscopic way, as the dinosaurs came and went. They have endured every mass extinction the planet has ever suffered, the asteroid impacts and the volcanic winters and the great dyings that erased so much else. Some scientists have pointed out that tardigrades are so hardy that they would likely survive nearly any catastrophe that could befall the Earth, outlasting almost everything, perhaps outlasting us. Long after the last human story has ended, the water bears may still be there in the moss, curling into their tons when the water dries, unfolding again when it returns. To hold that thought is to feel the ground shift a little beneath our sense of what is fragile and what is strong. We think of ourselves as the durable ones, the survivors, the masters of the planet. And yet the true masters of survival may be these tiny, gentle, nearly invisible animals, waddling through their droplets of water, carrying within their small bodies a resilience so complete that not even the emptiness of space could put an end to them. 3. Axolotl regeneration. There is a small salamander, native to a handful of ancient lakes near what is now Mexico City, whose face seems fixed in a permanent gentle smile, with feathery pink gills fanning out from its head like a delicate crown. It is called the axolotl, a name that comes from the old Aztec language and is bound up with the god Xolotl, who, in the myth, transformed himself into this creature to escape being sacrificed. But the axolotl's true strangeness is not in its mythology or even in its oddly charming appearance. It is in what happens when the axolotl is wounded. Cut off its leg, and it will simply grow a new one. Not a scar, not a stump, but a whole new limb, perfect down to the smallest bone and nerve. To appreciate how remarkable this is, consider what happens when we ourselves are injured. When a person loses a finger or a limb, the body does not rebuild it. Instead, it does the best it can, which is to close the wound and cover it over with scar tissue, sealing the damage rather than repairing it. This is true of nearly all mammals and, indeed, of most complex animals. We can heal, in the sense of stopping the bleeding and mending a break, but we cannot regenerate, cannot summon a lost part back into existence. The axolotl can, and it can do so again and again, regrowing the same limb many times over without the ability ever wearing out or the new limbs coming back malformed. The axolotl's powers of regeneration go far beyond limbs, and this is where the story moves from impressive to almost unbelievable. It can regrow its tail, complete with the spinal cord that runs through it. It can regenerate portions of its heart. It can rebuild parts of its eyes. Most astonishing of all, it can regrow sections of its own brain and have them knit back into the tissue that remains, restoring not just the physical structure but, it appears, the function. There are few limits that scientists have been able to find. Injuries that would leave any of us permanently changed, the axolotl treats as temporary inconveniences, quietly reconstructing whatever has been lost. The way it accomplishes this is a kind of biological magic that researchers are still working to understand. When an axolotl loses a limb, the cells near the wound do not simply form a scar. Instead, they gather into a structure called a blastema, a small mound of cells that, remarkably, seem to lose their fixed identities and become capable of forming many different tissues once again. From this blastema, the limb rebuilds itself, cell by cell, in the correct order, growing bone where bone should be, muscle where muscle should be, nerve threading through it all, until the new limb is complete and indistinguishable from the one that was lost. It is as though the wound reawakens the same instructions the body followed when it first grew the limb in the embryo, and simply runs them again. There is another oddity about the axolotl that seems, tantalizingly, to be connected to its regenerative gifts. Most salamanders begin life in a larval, aquatic form and then undergo metamorphosis, changing their bodies to live on land as adults, much as a tadpole becomes a frog. The axolotl, almost uniquely, never does this. It remains in its larval form its entire life, keeping its gills and its aquatic body even as it becomes sexually mature and capable of reproducing. This condition, called neoteny, means the axolotl is in a sense a creature that never fully grows up, staying perpetually in a youthful state. Some scientists suspect that this refusal to leave youth behind may be linked to its extraordinary ability to rebuild itself, as though holding on to the openness of the young body keeps open the doors that close in the rest of us. The reason researchers pore over these gentle salamanders is not idle curiosity. The dream, distant but real, is to understand how regeneration works so completely in the axolotl in the hope of one day awakening even a fraction of that ability in ourselves. We share a great deal of our basic biology with the axolotl. The genes and processes involved are not entirely foreign to us. Somewhere in the difference between a creature that regrows a limb and a creature that grows a scar may lie clues to healing spinal injuries, repairing damaged hearts, or restoring function to a brain after harm. The axolotl, smiling in its tank, may be holding a lesson that could one day change medicine profoundly. There is a quiet irony in all of this, and a sadness too. The axolotl, this master of self-repair, this creature that can heal almost any wound, is itself in grave danger of vanishing. In the wild, it survives in only a tiny remnant of the lake system it once filled, its home drained and polluted and crowded out by a growing city, and it is critically endangered, teetering near extinction. An animal that can rebuild almost any part of its own body cannot rebuild its lost world. It endures in vast numbers in laboratories and aquariums, cherished and studied, even as its natural home nearly disappears. To look at an axolotl is to look at a small living puzzle, an animal wearing the face of perpetual youth and carrying, in its ordinary-seeming body, an answer to one of the oldest human longings, the wish to be made whole again after harm. It cannot tell us how it does what it does. It simply floats in its water, gills waving softly, and when it is broken, it quietly makes itself new. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this calm journey and the quiet ideas we explore together, consider subscribing to Nightmind Academy, so you can return here anytime you need a peaceful space to unwind and drift into sleep. 4. The platypus. When the first preserved specimen of a platypus was carried from Australia to Britain at the end of the 18th century, the scientists who examined it were convinced they were being tricked. Here was an animal with the flat, rubbery bill of a duck, the dense fur and body of a small otter, the broad flat tail of a beaver, and webbed feet ending in claws. It looked less like a discovered creature than an assembled hoax, the sort of thing a clever taxidermist might stitch together from spare parts to fool the gullible. Some of them reportedly took scissors to the pelt, searching for the stitches where the duck's bill had surely been sewn onto the animal's face. They found none. The platypus was real, and it was every bit as strange as it looked. But the platypus's oddness runs far deeper than its patchwork appearance, and each new fact about it seems designed to break another rule. Consider first the most fundamental question of all. Is it a mammal? By most measures, yes. It has fur, it is warm-blooded, and it produces milk to feed its young. And yet the platypus does something no ordinary mammal does. It lays eggs. Along with a few species of echidna, the platypus belongs to a tiny and ancient group called the monotremes, the only mammals in the world that reproduce by laying leathery eggs rather than giving birth to live young. The mother incubates her eggs, and when the tiny helpless babies hatch, she nourishes them with milk. But she has no nipples. Instead, the milk seeps out through patches of skin, and the young lap it from her fur. Then there is the bill, which turns out to be far more than a strange facial feature. It is, in fact, one of the most sophisticated sensory organs in the animal kingdom. The platypus hunts underwater, and when it dives, it closes its eyes, its ears, and its nostrils completely, sealing itself off from sight, sound, and smell. It is, for those underwater moments, effectively blind and deaf. And yet it hunts with deadly precision, snapping up shrimp and insect larvae and small creatures from the murky riverbed. It does this through electroreception. The bill is studded with thousands of tiny sensors that can detect the faint electrical fields generated by the muscle movements of its prey. The platypus, in the dark water with its senses closed, is essentially feeling the invisible electrical flickers of other living things, homing in on the tiny sparks of life around it. And the platypus is venomous, which is itself extraordinary, because venom is vanishingly rare among mammals. The males possess sharp spurs on their hind legs, connected to glands that produce a potent venom. It is not usually deadly to a human being, but it can cause pain so severe and so long-lasting that victims have described it as beyond anything they had ever experienced. A pain that ordinary painkillers barely touch and that can linger for days or weeks. The venom is used mainly in fights between males competing over mates, a reminder that beneath its gentle, almost comical exterior, the platypus carries a genuine weapon. The strangeness continues right down into the animal's very cells. When scientists examined the platypus's chromosomes, the structures that carry its genes, they found yet another surprise. Most mammals, humans included, determine sex with a single pair of sex chromosomes. The platypus has 10. Its sex determination system is a complex chain of chromosomes that behaves in ways more reminiscent of birds than of mammals, another thread linking this creature to a deep and tangled evolutionary past. And more recently, researchers discovered that platypus fur glows. Under ultraviolet light, the animal's normally brown coat fluoresces a soft blue-green, for reasons that remain unclear, adding one more small mystery to a creature already overflowing with them. It is worth pausing to tally the list, because each item alone would make an animal remarkable, and the platypus somehow carries all of them at once. It lays eggs like a reptile, yet nurses its young like a mammal. It hunts by sensing electricity, blind and deaf beneath the water. It carries venom like a snake, glows like nothing anyone expected, and hides a chromosome system unlike that of any other mammal. No single creature has any business combining so many contradictions in one body. To make sense of the platypus, it helps to understand that it is not, as it might seem, a random jumble of mismatched features. It is a living window into a very ancient chapter of the mammal story. The monotremes split away from the branch that led to all other mammals extraordinarily long ago, well over 100 million years in the past, and they have carried forward into the present a mixture of traits from that distant time, features that other mammals lost or transformed. The egg-laying, the odd chromosomes, the venom, the electric sense, all of these are echoes of an older world, preserved in a creature that has quietly continued its own way while the rest of the mammals went in a different direction entirely. The platypus is not a hoax or a mistake. It is a survivor from deep time. There is something wonderful in the fact that such a creature exists at all, that evolution, following its own patient logic, produced an egg-laying, venomous, electrically sensing, duck-billed, glowing, fur-bearing animal and set it swimming quietly in the rivers of Australia. It offends our neat categories. It refuses to be simply one thing. And in doing so, it reminds us that the living world is under no obligation to fit the boxes we build for it. The platypus was strange enough to make serious scientists reach for their scissors, certain they were being fooled. But nature was not playing a trick. It was simply showing, in one improbable animal, how much stranger reality can be than anything we would think to invent. 5. The bombardier beetle. In the undergrowth of forests and fields across much of the world, there lives a small and unassuming beetle that carries within its body one of the most improbable weapons in all of nature. When threatened, it does not simply bite or flee. Instead, from the tip of its abdomen, it fires a jet of boiling, caustic chemicals at its attacker, accompanied by an audible popping sound, aimed with startling accuracy, and delivered as a rapid series of pulses. The bombardier beetle is, in effect, a living chemical cannon, and the way it manages this feat without cooking itself from the inside is a small miracle of biological engineering that has fascinated and puzzled scientists for generations. To understand the weapon, you have to look inside the beetle's body, where two separate chambers do the work. In one chamber, the beetle stores a mixture of two relatively harmless chemicals, hydrogen peroxide and a substance called hydroquinone. On their own, held apart, these compounds sit quietly and do no harm. The magic, and the danger, happens only when they are brought together with a set of catalysts. When the beetle is attacked, it squeezes the stored chemicals into a second, reinforced chamber, where enzymes are waiting. These enzymes trigger a violent reaction almost instantly, breaking down the peroxide and driving the mixture into a furious chemical frenzy. The result of this reaction is extraordinary. The chemicals combine and react so rapidly and so energetically that the mixture heats all the way up to the boiling point of water, roughly 100 degrees Celsius. The reaction also produces a sudden burst of gas, and the pressure of that gas builds until it forces the scalding, irritating liquid out through a nozzle at the tip of the beetle's abdomen, spraying it explosively at whatever is threatening the beetle. To a small predator, an ant or a spider or a frog, this is a devastating surprise, a burst of hot, noxious spray erupting from prey that seemed defenseless. Many attackers recoil immediately, and the beetle escapes. For a long time, one detail of this process seemed almost impossible to explain, and it became a small puzzle in its own right. If the beetle was simply spraying a steady stream of boiling chemicals, the heat and pressure building up inside its own body might well destroy it. How could such a violent, explosive reaction be contained and controlled within a creature so small and delicate? The answer, revealed by careful high-speed study, is that the beetle does not spray a continuous stream at all. It fires in extremely rapid pulses, hundreds of tiny explosions per second, so fast that to us they blur into what sounds like a single pop. Between each pulse, the chamber briefly refills and the pressure resets. This pulsing allows the beetle to manage the tremendous forces involved, releasing the reaction in controlled bursts rather than one continuous and self-destructive blast. The precision of the weapon is as impressive as its power. The bombardier beetle can aim its spray, swiveling the tip of its abdomen to direct the jet toward a threat from almost any angle, even firing over its own back at an attacker approaching from behind. It does not need to turn to face its enemy. It simply points its chemical cannon and fires. The combination of heat, irritating chemicals, sound, and accuracy makes it a defense that few small predators are willing to face twice. A creature that has once been struck by a bombardier beetle's spray tends to remember the lesson and leave such beetles alone. There is a deeper reason the bombardier beetle has drawn so much attention, beyond the sheer spectacle of a bug that shoots boiling chemicals. It sits at the center of long-running debates about how such an intricate mechanism could have come to exist at all. At first glance, the system seems to demand that every part be present at once: the chambers, the specific chemicals, the catalysts, the reinforced walls, the pulsing valves, as though a defense this precise could not have arisen gradually. And yet biologists have shown that each component has simpler precursors and plausible intermediate forms, that the chemicals the beetle uses are related to defensive compounds found in many other insects, and that a system like this could indeed have been built up step by step over long stretches of evolutionary time, each stage offering some modest advantage. The beetle is not proof against gradual change. It is a striking example of how far gradual change can go. What lingers, when you sit with the bombardier beetle, is a sense of how much sophistication can be packed into something so small and so easily overlooked. Here is a creature you might step over without a glance, and inside it operates a two-chamber reaction system with stored reactants, enzymatic catalysts, pressure management, pulsed firing, and a swiveling directional nozzle, all of it grown rather than built, assembled by no engineer but by the blind patient work of survival across countless generations. It carries a controlled explosion in its abdomen and wields it with precision, and it does so without understanding, without design, simply because ancestors who could defend themselves this way lived long enough to pass the ability on. The bombardier beetle is a reminder that the ingenuity of the living world is not reserved for the large and the famous. Some of the most astonishing machinery in all of nature is hidden in the smallest and most ordinary corners, in a beetle in the leaf litter that answers a threat with a burst of boiling fire. It should not, by the easy logic of what seems possible, be able to do what it does without harming itself. And yet it does, hundreds of times per second, every time its life depends on it. 6. Slime mold. Imagine a living thing with no brain, no nerves, not a single neuron anywhere in its body, that can nonetheless solve mazes, find the shortest path between scattered sources of food, and even reconstruct the layout of a national rail network as efficiently as a team of human engineers. Imagine that this thing is not an animal, not quite a fungus, not a plant, but a strange yellow blob that oozes across the forest floor and the undersides of rotting logs, a single cell that can grow to the size of a dinner plate. This is the slime mold, and it is one of the quiet scandals of biology, because it appears to do something very much like thinking without possessing any of the equipment we assume thinking requires. The particular slime mold that has amazed scientists most is a bright yellow organism called Physarum polycephalum. In its active phase, it forms what is called a plasmodium, a single enormous cell containing many nuclei, spreading itself out into a lacy, branching network of veins that pulse and flow. It has no central control, no head, no organs. It is, in a very real sense, just one giant cell, and yet it moves with purpose, extending itself toward food, pulling back from harm, exploring its surroundings and responding to them in ways that look unmistakably deliberate. The experiments that made the slime mold famous began simply. Researchers placed a piece of it at the entrance of a maze and a source of food, an oat flake, at the exit. The slime mold spread out through the maze, filling the passages, exploring every dead end and every branch. And then, having found the food, it did something remarkable. It withdrew from all the wrong paths, the dead ends and the detours, and concentrated itself along the single shortest route between its starting point and the food, tracing the optimal path through the maze as if it had studied the whole thing and reasoned out the answer. With no brain at all, it had solved a problem that we would consider a genuine test of intelligence. Then came the experiment that truly caught the world's attention. Scientists laid out oat flakes in a pattern that matched the positions of the cities around Tokyo, and placed the slime mold at the location of the city itself. Left to grow, the slime mold spread out and connected the food sources with its network of veins. As it did, it refined that network, strengthening the useful connections and abandoning the inefficient ones, until it had produced a web of links between the points. When the researchers compared the slime mold's network to the actual rail system that human engineers had designed over many years to connect those same cities, the two were strikingly similar. The brainless blob had arrived at a solution nearly as efficient and nearly as elegant as the one produced by trained professionals with all their planning and expertise. How can a single cell with no nervous system do any of this? The answer lies in the way the slime mold's whole body acts as a kind of distributed computer. As it spreads, the tubes and veins of its network pulse, moving fluid back and forth. Where the slime mold finds food, the flow through the connecting tubes strengthens, and those tubes thicken and are reinforced. Where a path leads nowhere, the flow weakens and the tube shrinks and is abandoned. Through this simple local rule, applied everywhere across its body at once, the slime mold gradually shapes itself into an efficient network without any central planner deciding anything. The intelligence, if we want to call it that, is not located in any one place. It is spread through the entire organism, emerging from countless small interactions rather than issued from a command center. The slime mold has other surprising talents as well. It can anticipate regularly timed events, slowing its activity in expectation of a cold, dry spell that has occurred at intervals, as though it possesses a rudimentary memory of rhythm. It can make what look like decisions when offered choices between different food sources of different qualities, weighing options in a sense. It can even pass along something like learned information when two slime molds fuse together, one that has learned to ignore a harmless irritant seeming to transfer that tolerance to another that has not. Each of these findings deepens the puzzle. Here is a creature doing things we associate with minds, and yet it has nothing we would recognize as a mind at all. What the slime mold forces us to confront is an uncomfortable and fascinating question about the nature of intelligence itself. We tend to assume that solving problems, finding efficient solutions, remembering, and deciding all require a brain, a centralized organ dedicated to processing information. The slime mold suggests that this assumption may be too narrow. Intelligence, or at least something that produces the same results as intelligence, may be a property that can emerge from simple systems following simple rules, distributed across a body with no center at all. The slime mold does not think the way we think, but it achieves outcomes that look like the fruits of thought, and it does so in a way utterly alien to our own experience of being a mind. There is a humbling wonder in watching a formless yellow blob ooze its way to the solution of a problem, patient and silent and utterly without understanding. It has been on Earth, in one form or another, for a very long time, quietly solving the problems of its own survival. And yet in its brainless, boneless, centerless body, it holds a quiet challenge to one of our most cherished assumptions, the belief that to solve a problem, you must first have a mind to solve it with. 7. The zombie ant fungus. In the humid forests of the tropics, there unfolds a horror story so precise and so patient that if you encountered it in fiction you might dismiss it as too grotesque to be believable. It begins when a single spore of a fungus called Ophiocordyceps drifts down and lands on the body of an ant. From that small and quiet beginning, the fungus will slowly and methodically take over not just the ant's body but, in a functional sense, its behavior, steering the doomed insect through a series of actions that serve only the fungus, culminating in the ant's death in exactly the place and manner the fungus requires. It is one of the most chilling examples of manipulation anywhere in the natural world. Once the spore has landed and taken hold, the fungus begins to grow inside the ant, spreading its filaments through the insect's body, feeding on it from within while keeping it alive. For a time, the ant continues about its business, foraging and moving through the colony, apparently normal, though inside it is being slowly consumed and colonized. But as the infection advances, the ant's behavior begins to change in ways that have nothing to do with the ant's own survival and everything to do with the fungus's needs. The insect grows restless and disoriented, breaking away from the well-worn trails of its colony, wandering off alone in a way healthy ants almost never do. Then comes the truly eerie part. The infected ant, driven by the fungus, climbs. It leaves the ground and ascends a plant stem, moving upward to a very particular height above the forest floor, a zone where the temperature and humidity happen to be ideal for the fungus to grow and reproduce. Having reached this precise elevation, the ant does something that seals its fate. It clamps its jaws down onto a leaf vein or a twig, biting with a convulsive, locking grip, and there it stays, anchored in place. This is often called the death grip, and it is the last meaningful act the ant will ever perform. Studies have found that the ants tend to make this final bite around the same time of day, often near solar noon, as though the fungus is timing the whole sequence with uncanny precision. Once the ant is locked in place, the fungus finishes its work. The ant dies, still gripping the leaf, and the fungus continues to grow within the now lifeless body. In time, a stalk erupts from the back of the dead ant's head, growing upward and outward, and from the tip of this stalk the fungus releases a shower of new spores. Because the ant was maneuvered to exactly the right height above a spot where its nestmates pass below, the spores rain down onto the trails and foraging grounds of the colony, ready to infect new victims and begin the terrible cycle again. Every step of the ant's final journey, the wandering, the climbing, the precise height, the timed bite, served this single purpose: to position the fungus perfectly for its own spread. What makes this story so unsettling is the degree of apparent control the fungus exerts over the ant's behavior, and for a long time it was assumed that the fungus must be invading and manipulating the ant's brain directly, hijacking the insect's mind. But careful study revealed something even stranger. When researchers examined infected ants closely, they found that the fungus grows throughout the ant's body, wrapping around and infiltrating its muscles, forming an interconnected network of fungal cells threaded through the insect's tissues. Remarkably, the ant's brain itself is often left comparatively intact until the very end. The fungus appears to control the ant not by seizing its brain but by taking command of its muscles directly, and perhaps by flooding its body with chemicals that alter its behavior. In a sense, the ant may remain trapped as a helpless passenger inside a body no longer under its own command. Its muscles moved by another will entirely. The precision of this manipulation has been honed over an immense span of time. Fossils have been found showing the telltale marks of this death grip on ancient leaves, evidence that this exact strategy, the climbing and the biting and the anchoring, has been playing out in the world's forests for tens of millions of years, far longer than human beings have existed. This is not a crude or accidental effect. It is a finely tuned behavioral takeover, refined across countless generations of fungus and ant locked in their grim relationship, until the fungus could reliably steer its host to the perfect spot to die. There is a strange and sobering lesson in the zombie ant fungus, one that reaches beyond the specific gruesomeness of the story. It reveals that the line between an organism and its own behavior, between a creature and the will that seems to drive it, can be quietly severed and seized by another living thing. We like to think of behavior as something that flows from within, expressing the needs and choices of the one who acts. The infected ant shows that an outside organism can hijack that flow entirely, turning a creature into an instrument for purposes utterly opposed to its own, without the creature being able to resist or even, perhaps, to understand. The forests where this happens look peaceful enough, green and alive with the ordinary business of insects. But scattered through them are the small monuments to this quiet takeover: dead ants locked by their jaws to the undersides of leaves, fungal stalks rising from their heads, each one a testament to a manipulation so precise it borders on the unbelievable. The zombie ant fungus should not, by any comfortable intuition, be able to do what it does. And yet in the warm green shadows, it does it over and over, exactly as it has for millions of years. 8. Sailing stones. In a remote and parched corner of Death Valley, one of the hottest and driest places on Earth, there is a flat dry lake bed called racetrack playa, and scattered across its cracked and dusty surface are stones, some small, some weighing hundreds of pounds. Behind many of these stones stretch long trails etched into the ground, tracks that show the rocks have moved, sometimes for hundreds of feet, gliding across the flat playa as though pushed by an invisible hand. Some trails run straight, others curve gently, and some even turn sharp corners or double back on themselves. And for decades, no one had ever seen the stones move. They simply lay there, silent and still, at the ends of trails that proved they had traveled, in a place where nothing should have been able to move them at all. The mystery of these sailing stones, sometimes called moving rocks or sliding stones, was genuinely baffling, and it invited every kind of explanation. The playa is almost perfectly flat, so the stones were not rolling downhill. There are no people out there constantly, and the trails showed no footprints alongside them, ruling out pranksters dragging the rocks. The stones moved in a landscape of extreme stillness, in a valley of brutal heat and near total dryness, and yet move they did, leaving their unmistakable tracks. Some observers proposed strong winds, others speculated about magnetic forces, and a few reached for stranger ideas still. But for a long time, the honest answer was simply that no one knew, because no one had ever caught the stones in the act. Part of what made the puzzle so durable was how rarely the stones seemed to move, and how completely they seemed to do it in secret. Researchers who marked the positions of stones and returned later would sometimes find them shifted, occasionally by great distances, but always between visits, never while anyone watched. The movements appeared to happen only under particular and uncommon conditions, and only, it seemed, when no one was there to see. This gave the whole phenomenon an almost mischievous quality, as though the stones were determined to preserve their secret, moving only in the empty hours when the playa belonged to no one. The solution, when it finally came, was less supernatural than some had hoped, but in its own way just as wonderful, a delicate conspiracy of rare conditions all coming together at once. It turns out that on certain cold winter nights, a thin layer of water, from rain or snowmelt, collects on the surface of the normally bone-dry playa, just deep enough to matter. When the temperature drops, this shallow water freezes into a thin, fragile sheet of ice, encasing the lower parts of the stones. Then, as the morning sun warms the playa, the ice begins to break apart into large floating panes, still slick and buoyant on the water beneath. Here the final ingredient enters. A light wind, nothing dramatic, just a gentle breeze, is enough to push these great thin sheets of ice across the water-covered surface. And as the ice sheets drift, they shove the embedded stones along with them, sliding the rocks slowly across the slick, muddy bottom of the playa. The stones may move only inches per minute, almost imperceptibly, carried along by rafts of ice under the push of a soft wind. As they go, they carve their trails into the soft mud beneath. When the water finally dries and the ice melts away, the stones are left stranded in new positions, their journeys recorded in the tracks behind them, and the playa bakes hard and dry again as though nothing had ever stirred. It took modern technology to finally confirm this. Patient researchers who placed instruments and cameras out on the playa and waited through the rare confluence of conditions until at last they captured the stones in motion, drifting along on their morning rafts of ice. What had seemed for so long like something close to magic turned out to be an exquisitely balanced natural process, one that requires water in a place of drought, ice in a place of heat, and wind gentle enough to move floating ice but not so strong as to be obvious, all arriving together in a narrow window that opens only occasionally and closes again quickly. There is something deeply satisfying, and also deeply instructive, in the story of the sailing stones. For years the phenomenon sat at the edge of the explainable, tempting people toward mystical or extravagant theories, precisely because the ordinary explanation seemed impossible. Stones do not move on their own across flat ground in one of the driest places on the planet. And yet the truth was that a set of perfectly natural forces, each unremarkable on its own, combined in a rare and precise way to produce an effect that looked, for all the world, like the impossible. The mystery was real, but its answer was hidden not in some new law of nature but in the delicate timing of familiar ones. The sailing stones remind us that the strange and the inexplicable are often just the ordinary meeting under unusual conditions, that what looks like magic can be the product of common ingredients assembled with rare precision. They also remind us of the value of patience, of the researchers willing to wait through long cold nights in an empty desert for a chance to see what no one had seen. Out on racetrack playa, the stones still rest at the ends of their winding trails, silent monuments to their own secret journeys. And now we know their secret. On the right rare morning, cradled in ice and nudged by a gentle wind, the stones of the desert set sail. 9. Blood Falls, Antarctica at the frozen end of the world, where the Taylor Glacier presses down onto the ice-covered surface of a lake in one of Antarctica's stark and beautiful dry valleys. There is a sight that stops the eye and unsettles the mind. From a crack in the pale blue-white face of the glacier, a deep red fluid seeps and spreads, staining the ice below in vivid crimson streaks, as though the glacier itself were wounded and bleeding out onto the snow. The early explorers who first came upon it in the frozen desolation of that landscape were startled and puzzled, and the name they gave it has stuck ever since. They called it Blood Falls, and the mystery of what it was, and where it came from, would take a very long time to unravel. When Blood Falls was first discovered in the early 20th century, the red color led to a natural guess. The scientists of the day supposed that the crimson must come from red algae, some cold-loving microscopic life staining the water with its pigment, since colored algae were a familiar cause of tinted snow and ice elsewhere. It was a reasonable assumption, and for some time it stood. But it was wrong. The truth turned out to be both simpler in its chemistry and stranger in its implications, and it would open a window into a hidden world sealed beneath the ice for an almost unimaginable span of time. The red of Blood Falls comes not from life directly, but from iron. The fluid seeping from the glacier is not ordinary meltwater but an ancient brine, extraordinarily salty water that has been trapped beneath the glacier, cut off from the outside world. This brine is rich in dissolved iron. So long as it remains sealed beneath the ice, away from air, the iron stays in a form that is colorless. But the moment the brine emerges from the crack in the glacier and meets the oxygen of the Antarctic air, the iron reacts, essentially rusting on contact, and it is this rusting that turns the water a deep and startling red. Blood Falls, in a sense, is the glacier bleeding rust, the iron in its ancient hidden water oxidizing the instant it sees the light. But the source of that brine is where the real wonder lies. Beneath the Taylor Glacier, sealed away under thick ice, there exists a body of water, a subglacial reservoir of that iron-rich, intensely salty brine, and it has been trapped down there, isolated from the atmosphere and from sunlight, for a very long time, by some estimates well over 1 million years. This is water that was locked away before our species existed, held in darkness and cold and crushing isolation through ages of the world above, entirely cut off from the sun, the air, and the ordinary cycles of the surface. It is about as remote and sealed off an environment as one can imagine on the surface of the Earth, a pocket of the deep past preserved beneath the ice. And here is the part that turns a chemical curiosity into something profound. That sealed, sunless, oxygen-starved brine is not dead. It is home to living microbes, communities of microorganisms that have survived down there in the dark, cut off from everything, for all that immense stretch of time. With no sunlight to power photosynthesis and almost no oxygen to breathe, these microbes make their living in an entirely different way, drawing energy from the chemistry of the iron and sulfur compounds dissolved in their frigid, briny home. They have persisted, generation after generation, in one of the most inhospitable and isolated environments on the planet, a lightless salty pocket beneath the glacier at the bottom of the world. The implications of this reach far beyond one red stain on an Antarctic glacier. If life can survive, sealed and sunless and starved of oxygen, in a briny reservoir beneath the Antarctic ice for hundreds of thousands of years, then life may be far more tenacious and far more adaptable than we tend to assume. And that possibility bears directly on the search for life beyond the Earth. Elsewhere in our solar system there are worlds thought to hide oceans of salty water beneath thick shells of ice, moons like Europa and Enceladus, where sunless seas may lie locked away in darkness. The microbes of blood falls show that such places, however forbidding, are not necessarily barren. If life can hold on beneath the Taylor Glacier, it might hold on beneath the ice of a distant moon as well. Blood falls, then, is far more than a geological oddity or a startling splash of color in a white landscape. It is a leak from a lost world, a thin crimson thread connecting the surface to a sealed and ancient reservoir where life has quietly endured against every expectation. Each red streak on the ice is iron from that hidden brine meeting the air for the first time in ages, rusting in an instant, marking the place where the deep isolated past bleeds through into the present. It looks like a wound, and in the imagination of those first explorers it looked like blood. But it is something more remarkable than injury. It is a sign of persistence, of life refusing to surrender even in the most sealed and frozen dark. To stand before blood falls, if one ever could, would be to witness the meeting of two vastly separated worlds, the frozen surface and the hidden deep, joined for a moment in a stream of rust-red water. It should not, by easy intuition, be there at all, this bleeding glacier in a place of pure white cold. And yet it is, quietly telling its story of iron and brine and stubborn life in the dark, to anyone willing to understand what the red really means. 10. Lake Natron. In the Great Rift Valley of northern Tanzania lies a lake that looks, in certain lights and seasons, like something from another planet or from a nightmare. Its waters can glow a deep and unnerving red, swirled with patterns of white and rust, and its shores are crusted with strange salts. Most disturbing of all are the creatures found along its edges. Birds and bats and other animals turn to stone-like statues, their bodies preserved in eerily lifelike poses, calcified and hardened where they died. This is Lake Natron, and though the legends that surround it exaggerate and distort the truth, the reality of the place is strange enough on its own, a lake so harsh that it can turn the dead into monuments. The lake takes its name from natron, a naturally occurring compound of sodium, and understanding natron is the key to understanding everything else about this place. Lake Natron sits in a volcanic landscape, and the waters that feed it are rich in minerals leached from the surrounding rock, particularly sodium carbonate and related salts. The lake has no outlet. Water flows in but can only leave by evaporating away under the fierce equatorial sun. As the water evaporates, the minerals are left behind and concentrated, building up over time until the lake becomes extraordinarily alkaline, its waters caustic and salt-laden, with a chemistry closer to that of harsh cleaning agents than to an ordinary lake. The temperatures at the surface can climb punishingly high, and the alkalinity can be strong enough to burn the skin and eyes of animals not adapted to it. The famous calcified animals are the most sensational feature of Lake Natron, and they have given rise to much myth and misunderstanding. The truth is that the lake does not instantly petrify living creatures, freezing them mid-motion as some accounts suggest. Rather, animals that die in or around the lake, birds that misjudge the reflective surface and crash into it, or creatures that succumb to its harsh conditions, become coated and preserved by the lake's mineral-rich waters. The sodium carbonate and other salts encrust their bodies, and the extreme, hostile chemistry of the environment slows or prevents the normal processes of decay. The result is that the dead animals are preserved in remarkably lifelike condition, hardened and calcified, sometimes with wings and feathers still eerily intact, so that they resemble statues of themselves, monuments cast from their own bodies. Given all this harshness, the caustic water, the searing heat, the crushing alkalinity, you might expect Lake Natron to be utterly dead, a sterile chemical basin where nothing could possibly live. And yet, astonishingly, it teems with life uniquely adapted to its extremes. The red color that gives the lake its otherworldly appearance comes largely from microorganisms, salt-loving microbes, and algae that not only tolerate the brutal conditions but flourish in them, producing pigments that stain the water red and orange. Where most life would perish, these specialized organisms have made the impossible their home, coloring the deadly lake with the hues of their own survival. The red color itself deepens as the dry season concentrates the water and the microbes multiply, so that from above the lake can resemble a great pool of blood or molten metal, its surface marbled with white crusts of soda and salt where the minerals have crystallized. It is a landscape that seems to belong to the earliest, most volcanic ages of the planet rather than to the living present. And there is a further wonder, one that transforms Lake Natron from a place of death into a place of birth. This forbidding lake is the single most important breeding ground in the world for the lesser flamingo. Millions of these birds gather at Lake Natron to nest and raise their young. Far from being repelled by the lake's hostility, the flamingos depend upon it, and in a sense are protected by it. The very harshness that keeps most creatures away also keeps away the predators that might otherwise raid the flamingos' nests. The birds build their nests on small islands and mudflats within the caustic lake, safe behind a moat of water too hostile for most threats to cross. They feed on the very microorganisms that turn the water red, and it is these same pigments in their food that give the flamingos their characteristic pink coloring. The lake that turns the dead to stone is also the cradle of new flamingo life. Lake Natron, then, is a place of striking contradiction, a lake that seems to embody death, with its blood-red waters and its calcified statues of fallen animals, and yet is also a place brimming with specialized life and serving as the nursery for millions of birds. It should, by all easy intuition, be a barren and lifeless chemical wasteland, and to the unadapted creature it is indeed lethal. But life, endlessly inventive, has found ways not merely to endure the lake but to thrive on precisely the conditions that make it deadly, and to build a stronghold of survival within its hostile embrace. The eerie beauty of Lake Natron, its glowing red surface, its statue-like dead, its clouds of flamingos rising against the harsh landscape, holds a lesson that runs through so many of the strangest things in the world. What appears lethal from one perspective can be a refuge from another. What seems like a place only of death can be, for the right forms of life, a place of safety and abundance. The lake does not care for our categories of hostile and hospitable, deadly and nurturing. It simply is what its chemistry makes it, and life, as it so often does, has bent even this harshness to its own persistent purposes, raising new generations in the shadow of a lake that turns the fallen to stone. The double-slit experiment. There is a single experiment, simple enough to describe in a few sentences, which many physicists regard as containing the deepest mystery in all of science. It involves nothing more than particles, a barrier with two narrow slits, and a screen behind to record where the particles land. And yet its results are so contrary to ordinary intuition that they have forced us to accept that reality at its most fundamental level behaves in ways utterly unlike everyday experience. This is the double-slit experiment, and it reveals, more vividly than almost anything else, the profound weirdness at the heart of quantum mechanics. Begin with the version that makes sense. If you fire small particles, say tiny balls, at a barrier with two slits, and record where they land on a screen behind, you get exactly what you would expect. The particles pass through one slit or the other and pile up in two bands on the screen, roughly behind each slit. This is ordinary, sensible behavior, the behavior of little bits of matter traveling through openings. Now consider what happens with waves instead, like water waves or light waves. When a wave passes through two slits, it spreads out from each slit and the two resulting waves overlap and interfere, reinforcing in some places and cancelling in others, producing a pattern of many bands on the screen, an interference pattern, the signature of wave-like behavior. So particles make two bands, and waves make many bands. Simple enough. The strangeness begins when we look at what the tiniest particles of matter actually do. When physicists fire very small particles, such as electrons, at a double slit, the particles produce an interference pattern, the many-banded pattern characteristic of waves, not the two bands one would expect from particles. Somehow the electrons, which we think of as tiny bits of matter, behave like waves passing through both slits at once and interfering with themselves. This is already deeply strange, but it becomes stranger still. The physicists can send the electrons through one at a time, so that only a single electron is in the apparatus at any moment, with no other electrons around for it to interfere with. Each single electron lands as a single dot on the screen, as a particle should. But as thousands of these individual electrons go through, one by one, over time, the dots build up into the interference pattern. Each electron, alone, somehow contributes to a wave pattern, as if each one had passed through both slits and interfered with itself before landing as a single point. This forces a startling conclusion. The single electron does not simply go through one slit or the other. In some sense, before it is observed, it goes through both, existing as a spread-out wave of possibilities that passes through both openings and interferes with itself, only becoming a definite particle at a definite location when it strikes the screen and is detected. The electron behaves as though it explores all the possibilities at once, and only settles into one actual outcome upon being observed. This blurring of the line between particle and wave, this existence as a spread of possibilities until observation, is one of the central mysteries of quantum mechanics, and the double-slit experiment displays it with beautiful clarity. But there is a final twist, and it is the strangest part of all. Physicists, naturally curious, decided to place detectors at the slits to watch which slit each electron actually goes through, to catch the particle in the act. And when they do this, when they observe which slit the electron passes through, the interference pattern vanishes. The electrons stop behaving like waves and start behaving like ordinary particles, producing the two-band pattern instead of the many-banded interference. The mere act of observing which path the electron takes changes its behavior, collapsing the spread of wave-like possibilities into a definite particle going through a definite slit. When no one watches which slit, the electron behaves as a wave passing through both. When the path is observed, it behaves as a particle passing through one. The act of observation itself seems to shape what reality does. This role of observation is perhaps the most philosophically unsettling aspect of the whole affair. It suggests that at the quantum level, the act of measuring a system is not a passive recording of what is already there but somehow participates in determining the outcome, forcing the spread of possibilities to resolve into a single definite reality. Exactly how to interpret this remains genuinely contested among physicists and philosophers. Various interpretations of quantum mechanics have been proposed, differing profoundly in the pictures of reality they paint. Yet all must grapple with the plain experimental fact that observation changes the behavior of the particles. The double-slit experiment is so important precisely because it distills these deep mysteries into a form that is concrete and repeatable. It is not a matter of speculation. The interference pattern appears and disappears exactly as described, reliably, whenever the experiment is done. The strangeness is not in some interpretation laid on top of the results, but in the results themselves, which stubbornly refuse to fit the picture of reality we build from everyday experience. What the double-slit experiment ultimately reveals is that the world at its most fundamental level does not work the way our intuitions insist it must. The solid, definite reality we experience, in which things are in one place at a time and behave the same whether or not anyone is watching, dissolves at the quantum scale into a realm of spread-out possibilities, of wave and particle intertwined, of outcomes that seem to await observation before becoming definite. It should not be possible for a single particle to pass through two openings at once and interfere with itself, or for the mere act of watching to change what a particle does. And yet the experiment shows, again and again, that this is exactly how reality behaves. The deepest layer of the world is quietly, profoundly strange. Magnetars. Out in the depths of space lie objects so extreme that they push the very laws of physics to their limits, and among the most extreme of all are the strange stellar remnants known as magnetars. A magnetar is a type of neutron star, itself already one of the most bizarre objects in the universe, but a magnetar carries this strangeness further still, possessing a magnetic field so unimaginably powerful that it defies easy comprehension. These are the most magnetic objects known to exist anywhere in the cosmos, and their fields are so intense that they would be lethal from a great distance and could disrupt the very structure of matter itself. To understand a magnetar is to confront physics operating at scales of power almost beyond imagining. To grasp what a magnetar is, one must first understand the neutron star from which it derives. When a massive star reaches the end of its life and explodes as a supernova, the core that remains can collapse under its own gravity into an object of almost inconceivable density. The protons and electrons of ordinary matter are crushed together into neutrons, and the result is a neutron star, an object perhaps only about a dozen miles across but containing more mass than our Sun, so dense that a mere sugar cube-sized amount of its material would weigh as much as a mountain. Neutron stars are already among the strangest things in the universe, extreme in density, gravity, and rotation. A magnetar is a neutron star that also possesses a magnetic field of staggering, almost unbelievable strength. The magnetic fields of magnetars are so powerful that the numbers involved lose ordinary meaning. Their fields can be trillions of times stronger than the magnetic field of the Earth, and vastly stronger even than the already immense fields of ordinary neutron stars, making them by far the most magnetic objects known in all of nature. Such a field is not merely strong in the way a powerful magnet is strong. It is strong enough to have physical effects that seem to belong to science fiction. Close to a magnetar, the magnetic field would be so intense that it would distort the shapes of atoms themselves, disrupting the ordinary structure of matter, and it would be lethal to a human being from a distance of many thousands of miles, its field interfering with the delicate electrical and chemical processes on which life depends. These are objects whose power reaches out and reshapes the fundamental behavior of matter around them. Magnetars reveal their nature through dramatic and violent outbursts. The tremendous magnetic fields are under enormous stress, and from time to time this stress is released suddenly and catastrophically, in events that can involve the cracking or shifting of the magnetar's crust, sometimes described as starquakes, accompanied by titanic bursts of energy. These outbursts can release, in a fraction of a second, more energy than our Sun produces over a very long span of time, flooding space with intense radiation. Some of the most powerful bursts of certain kinds of radiation ever detected have been traced to magnetars, and such an event, even from a magnetar located a great distance away across the galaxy, can be strong enough to have measurable effects when it reaches our region of space, a testament to the almost inconceivable violence of these eruptions. How magnetars come to possess such extreme fields is an area of ongoing study. In magnetars, some combination of factors, possibly involving rapid rotation and turbulent processes during and after the star's formation, is thought to amplify the field to its extraordinary strength. Magnetars also tend to be young objects whose intense magnetic activity fades over time, so that a magnetar's most violent phase is thought to be a stage in the life of certain neutron stars rather than a permanent condition. Studying them helps physicists probe matter and magnetic fields under conditions far more extreme than anything that can be produced on Earth. Magnetars matter to science precisely because they are laboratories of the extreme, places where matter, gravity, and magnetism are pushed to intensities we cannot come close to reproducing ourselves. By observing them, physicists can test their understanding of how matter behaves under staggering pressures and fields, exploring regimes of physics that are otherwise entirely inaccessible. The extreme conditions around magnetars also make them relevant to various energetic cosmic phenomena, and they have been considered as possible sources of some of the mysterious, powerful signals astronomers detect from across the universe. In studying magnetars, we are studying the outer limits of what nature can do to matter and energy. There is something awe-inspiring, and also humbling, in contemplating a magnetar. Here is an object formed from the death of a star, crushed into a sphere the size of a city yet heavier than the sun, spinning rapidly, and wrapped in a magnetic field of such ferocity that it would tear at the structure of matter and kill from thousands of miles away, capable of releasing in an instant more energy than our sun pours out across ages. Such objects exist scattered through our galaxy and beyond, remnants of stellar catastrophe, quietly holding fields of power beyond anything in our experience, occasionally erupting in bursts that ripple across the galaxy. Magnetars remind us that the universe contains conditions and objects far more extreme than anything in our familiar world, that the calm night sky hides among its points of light some of the most violent and powerful things imaginable. They should, by the standards of everyday experience, be impossible, magnetic fields of a strength we can scarcely put into words, wrapped around the crushed corpses of dead stars. And yet they are real, out there in the dark, spinning and burning with fields that warp the fabric of matter, a reminder that reality, at its most extreme, dwarfs anything our ordinary imaginations would dare to invent. Neutron star gold. Consider the gold in a wedding ring, in a coin, in a piece of treasured jewelry. It is precious, rare, and beautiful, and human beings have valued it for as long as we have existed. But have you ever wondered where gold actually comes from? Not where it is mined, but where it was originally made. The answer is one of the most astonishing facts in all of science, and it connects the ring on a finger to some of the most violent and extraordinary events in the entire universe. The gold on Earth, and much of the other heavy precious metal, was forged in the cataclysmic collision of neutron stars, in explosions so powerful they ripple the fabric of space itself. Every piece of gold you have ever seen was born in a collision between the dead cores of stars, unimaginably far away and long ago. To understand this, one must first appreciate where the elements come from in general. In the beginning, the universe contained essentially only the lightest elements, hydrogen and helium. All the heavier elements, the carbon in our bodies, the oxygen we breathe, the iron in our blood, were manufactured later, inside stars. Stars are, in a sense, great furnaces that fuse light elements into heavier ones, and over the course of their lives and in their explosive deaths, they scatter these newly made elements into space, where they go on to form new stars, planets, and eventually living things. This is the origin of the famous idea that we are made of stardust, that the atoms composing us and our world were cooked inside stars long ago. But not all elements are made in the same way, and the very heaviest ones, like gold, pose a special puzzle. Gold and certain other heavy elements are difficult to make, requiring conditions far more extreme than the ordinary fusion that powers stars. Making these heaviest elements requires an environment of extraordinary density and a flood of neutrons so intense that atomic nuclei can rapidly absorb them and build up into very heavy forms, a process that demands conditions almost unimaginably extreme. Ordinary stars, even in their explosive supernova deaths, may not fully account for the amount of gold and similar heavy elements we observe, and for a long time the precise origin of these elements was a genuine open question in astrophysics. Where in the universe were conditions violent and dense enough to forge gold in the quantities we find? The answer points to one of the most extreme events the cosmos has to offer: the collision and merger of two neutron stars. Recall that neutron stars are the ultradense remnants of dead massive stars, city-sized objects heavier than the Sun, made of matter crushed to incredible density. Sometimes two neutron stars orbit each other, and over vast stretches of time they spiral closer and closer together until, finally, they collide and merge in an event of almost inconceivable violence. In this merger, an enormous amount of incredibly dense, neutron-rich material is involved, and the conditions of density and neutron flux required to forge the heaviest elements are met. In the fury of the collision and its aftermath, gold and other heavy elements are created in great quantity and flung out into space, seeding the cosmos with these precious materials. This was not merely a theoretical idea, it received dramatic confirmation. Several years ago, scientists detected the ripples in space itself, the gravitational waves, produced by two neutron stars merging far across the universe, and at the same time observed the flash of light and radiation from the same event with telescopes. This combined observation was a landmark in astronomy, and crucially, the light from the merger carried the signatures of heavy elements being created in the explosion, providing direct evidence that neutron star mergers do indeed forge gold and other heavy elements. Scientists could see, in the aftermath of that distant collision, the actual production of precious metals, confirming that these cataclysmic events are a major source of the gold in the universe. Let the implication of this sink in fully. The gold atoms in every ring, every coin, every piece of jewelry on Earth were created in the collision of neutron stars, in explosions that occurred long before the Earth or the Sun existed. That gold was flung out into space, drifted through the galaxy, and eventually became part of the cloud of material from which our solar system formed, incorporated into the Earth as it came together. When you hold a piece of gold, you are holding the product of one of the most violent events in the universe, matter forged in the merger of dead stars and carried across space and time to end up in your hand. The preciousness we attach to gold takes on a new and deeper meaning. It is precious not only because it is rare but because of the extraordinary cosmic violence required to create it. This is a striking example of how modern science can connect the intimate and familiar to the vast and cosmic, revealing that the ordinary objects of our world carry within them the history of the universe. The gold of Earth is a tangible link to events of unimaginable scale, a piece of the cosmos's most violent forge held quietly in the palm of a hand. Neutron star gold reminds us that the boundary between the everyday and the astronomical is an illusion. The treasures we prize were made in the deaths and collisions of stars, and came to us across billions of years and unfathomable distances. It should seem impossible that the gold in a simple ring was born in the smash of neutron stars far out in space. And yet that is precisely the truth. A truth that turns every piece of gold into a small, gleaming fragment of cosmic history, a keepsake from a collision between dead stars. Gödel's incompleteness theorem. For much of human history, mathematics has stood as the very model of certainty, the one domain where truths could be proven absolutely, beyond all doubt, by pure logic. 2 plus 2 equals 4, and no amount of opinion or circumstance can change it. This dream of perfect certainty reached its height in the early 20th century, when mathematicians hoped to place all of mathematics on an unshakable foundation, to build a complete and consistent system from which every mathematical truth could, in principle, be proven, leaving nothing uncertain and nothing outside the reach of proof. And then, in 1931, a young logician named Gödel proved a theorem that shattered this dream forever, demonstrating that such perfect completeness is impossible, that in any sufficiently powerful mathematical system there will always be true statements that can never be proven. This is Gödel's incompleteness theorem, and it is one of the most profound and startling results in the history of human thought. To appreciate the shock of what Gödel proved, one must understand the aspiration it destroyed. Mathematicians and logicians of the time sought to establish mathematics on a firm and complete logical foundation, a formal system of axioms and rules from which all mathematical truths could be derived. The goal was a system that was both consistent, meaning it contained no contradictions, and complete, meaning that every true statement expressible in the system could be proven within it. Such a system would fulfill the ancient dream of mathematical certainty, guaranteeing that every mathematical truth was, in principle, accessible to proof, with no truths left forever beyond reach. It was a grand and beautiful ambition, and many believed it could be achieved. Gödel's theorem proved that this ambition was fundamentally impossible. What he showed, with rigorous logical proof, is that in any formal mathematical system powerful enough to describe basic arithmetic, and free of contradiction, there will necessarily exist statements that are true but that cannot be proven within the system itself. There will always be truths that the system cannot reach, statements whose truth is real but whose proof lies forever beyond the system's rules. No matter how you construct your system of axioms, as long as it is powerful enough to capture ordinary arithmetic and remains consistent, it will be incomplete, unable to prove all the truths that it can express. The dream of a complete system, one that could prove every truth, was not merely difficult to achieve, it was logically impossible. The way Gödel proved this is itself a marvel of ingenuity, involving a brilliant and subtle piece of self-reference. In essence, Gödel found a way to construct, within the language of the mathematical system, a statement that in effect refers to itself and asserts its own unprovability. A statement that says, in a carefully constructed mathematical form, this statement cannot be proven within this system. Then he showed the dilemma this creates. If the system could prove this statement, then the statement would be false, since it asserts its own unprovability, and the system would be proving a falsehood, meaning it would be inconsistent, riddled with contradiction. But if the system is consistent, containing no contradictions, then it cannot prove the statement, which means the statement is true precisely in asserting that it cannot be proven. So here is a statement that is true but unprovable within the system, exactly what Gödel set out to demonstrate. The system contains a truth it cannot reach. The implications of this result are vast and reach far beyond the technical concerns of logicians. Gödel's theorem reveals a fundamental limitation built into the very nature of formal mathematical systems, and by extension into any system of reasoning of that kind. It tells us that truth and probability are not the same thing, that there are mathematical truths that exist but that no proof can ever establish, at least not within a given consistent system. This drives a permanent wedge between what is true and what can be proven, overturning the assumption that in mathematics, at least, the two must coincide. There will always be a gap, always truths that slip beyond the reach of proof, no matter how the system is built. Gödel's work has provoked deep reflection ever since, extending into philosophy, the theory of computation, and questions about the nature of the human mind. Some have seen in it a suggestion that human mathematical insight, our ability to recognize the truth of the unprovable statement, might exceed what any formal system can capture, though this interpretation is much debated. The theorem is closely connected to fundamental results about the limits of computation, revealing deep boundaries to formal reasoning itself. Whatever the correct interpretation of its broader significance, the mathematical result stands as rigorous and certain, an unassailable proof that certainty itself has limits. There is something both humbling and strangely liberating in Gödel's theorem. It shattered a cherished dream, the hope that mathematics could be made perfectly complete, that every truth could be brought within the reach of proof. In its place, it revealed a deeper truth about truth itself, that even in the most rigorous of all human endeavors, there are truths that exceed our systems, real but beyond the reach of any proof. The most certain domain of human knowledge turns out to contain, at its very foundation, an irreducible incompleteness. Gödel's incompleteness theorem stands as a monument to the power of human reason and, at the same time, to the limits of that power. It should not, by the old dream of mathematics, be possible that a system of pure logic could contain truths forever beyond its own proof. And yet Gödel proved, with unshakable logical rigor, that this is precisely the case, that incompleteness is woven into the very fabric of formal mathematics. In showing us the limits of proof, he expanded, immeasurably, our understanding of the strange and profound nature of truth. The Banach-Tarski paradox. There is a result in mathematics so counterintuitive that when people first hear it, they usually assume they have misunderstood, or that it must be some kind of trick or joke. It states that you can take a solid ball, divide it into a small number of pieces, and then, using nothing but rotations and rearrangements, reassemble those very same pieces into two solid balls, each exactly the same size as the original. Not two smaller balls, not two balls with gaps, but two complete balls identical to the one you started with. One ball becomes two, out of nothing, with no stretching and no adding of material. This is the Banach-Tarski paradox, and the astonishing thing is that it is not a trick at all. It is a rigorously proven theorem of mathematics. At first hearing, this seems to violate the most basic common sense about volume and matter. If you cut something into pieces and rearrange them, surely the total amount stays the same. You cannot get more stuff by cutting and rearranging. This intuition is unshakable for physical objects, and rightly so. And yet the mathematics says that, for an idealized mathematical ball, you can indeed decompose it into pieces and reassemble them into two balls of the same size. The resolution to this apparent madness lies in the strange and subtle nature of the pieces involved, and in the deep peculiarities of the infinite and the continuous that mathematics is forced to confront. The key to understanding the paradox, at least in spirit, is that the pieces into which the ball is divided are not ordinary pieces. They are not chunks you could cut with a knife or hold in your hand. They are infinitely intricate, unimaginably complex sets of points, so strange that they are called non-measurable, meaning that it is impossible to assign them any definite volume at all. Ordinary objects have a well-defined volume. These pieces do not. They are scattered clouds of points, infinitely detailed, defying any attempt to say how much space they occupy. Because these pieces have no well-defined volume, the ordinary rule that volumes must add up in a sensible way simply does not apply to them. The intuition that rearranging pieces preserves total volume depends on the pieces having volumes to begin with, and these pieces do not. This is possible only because a mathematical ball, unlike a physical one, is composed of infinitely many points, a continuous infinity of them, with no smallest piece and no graininess. This infinite, continuous structure is what allows the ball to be carved into these bizarre non-measurable clouds of points and reassembled paradoxically. In the real world, matter is made of a finite number of atoms. You cannot divide a physical ball into infinitely fine, infinitely intricate pieces, and so the Banach-Tarski paradox cannot be carried out with any real object. It is a statement about idealized mathematical objects, about the strange behavior of infinite sets of points, not about anything you could do with an actual ball of any real material. The proof of the paradox relies on a particular principle of mathematics called the axiom of choice, a principle that allows one to make infinitely many arbitrary selections at once, choosing an element from each of infinitely many sets even when there is no rule specifying how to choose. This axiom seems innocent and reasonable, and it is widely accepted and used throughout mathematics because it is enormously useful and even necessary for many important results. But the Banach-Tarski paradox is one of its strange consequences, one of the places where accepting this reasonable-seeming principle leads to a conclusion that offends all intuition. The paradox is, in a sense, the price mathematics pays for the power and convenience of the axiom of choice, a startling reminder that even our most reasonable assumptions can carry astonishing implications. The Banach-Tarski paradox does not represent a flaw or contradiction in mathematics. It is a valid theorem, correctly derived from accepted principles. What it reveals instead is how profoundly strange the mathematics of the infinite and the continuous can be. How far the behavior of infinite sets of points departs from the intuitions we form from finite, physical experience. Our sense of volume, of how pieces add up, of what rearrangement can and cannot do, is built from dealing with ordinary objects made of finite matter. When mathematics ventures into the realm of the infinite and the continuous, into idealized objects made of infinitely many points and pieces too strange to have any volume, those intuitions break down completely, and results like Banach-Tarski become possible. There is something both unsettling and exhilarating in contemplating the Banach-Tarski paradox. It shows that the world of pure mathematics, for all its rigor and logic, contains regions so strange that they defy everything our physical experience tells us must be true. It stretches the mind to confront the idea that, in the idealized realm of mathematical objects, one ball can become two through mere rearrangement, that volume itself can lose its meaning when the pieces are strange enough. And it stands as a striking example of how the infinite behaves in ways that the finite never could, how stepping into the boundless changes the very rules we thought were absolute. The paradox reminds us that mathematics is not merely a description of the physical world but a vast realm of its own, governed by logic that can lead to conclusions no physical intuition would ever suggest. It should be impossible to turn one ball into two by cutting and rearranging, and with any real, physical ball, it is. But in the infinite, continuous world of mathematical idealization, guided by accepted logical principles, it is not only possible but proven, a genuine theorem sitting quietly in the mathematics books, endlessly startling to everyone who encounters it, a monument to how strange the landscape of pure thought can be. The Methuselah star. Somewhere in our galaxy, not far away in cosmic terms, there shines an ancient star that once presented astronomers with a genuine paradox, one that seemed to threaten our understanding of the universe itself. When scientists estimated its age, they arrived at a figure that appeared, impossibly, to be older than the universe in which it exists. A star cannot be older than the cosmos that contains it, any more than a person can be older than the world they were born into. And yet the measurements seem to say exactly that. This star, formerly catalogued by a string of letters and numbers but affectionately nicknamed the Methuselah star after the longest-lived figure of ancient legend, became a small crisis and a fascinating puzzle, a reminder of both the power and the delicacy of how we measure the age of the heavens. The universe, according to our best understanding, came into being a definite span of time ago, in the event we call the Big Bang, and its age has been measured with considerable precision at roughly 14 billion years or so. This figure is one of the foundations of modern cosmology, established through multiple independent lines of evidence. Everything in the universe, every star and galaxy, must therefore be younger than this, formed at some point after the beginning. So when astronomers studied the Methuselah star and their initial estimates suggested it might be around 16 billion years old, or in any case older than the accepted age of the universe, something was clearly wrong. A star older than the universe is a contradiction, an impossibility that signals an error somewhere, either in our understanding of the star, or of the universe, or of the methods used to measure them. Estimating the age of a star is a subtle and difficult business, relying on detailed knowledge of how stars form, evolve, and shine over time, and on careful measurements of the star's properties, its composition, its brightness, its distance, and its stage of life. From these, using models of stellar evolution, astronomers infer how long the star has been burning. But each of these measurements carries uncertainties, and the models involve assumptions, so that the resulting age estimate is not a single exact number but a value with a range of uncertainty around it. In the case of the Methuselah star, the initial estimates, with their uncertainties, seem to point to an age uncomfortably close to or beyond the age of the universe, creating the paradox. The resolution of the puzzle came not from overthrowing our understanding of the universe but from refining the measurements and the models applied to the star. As astronomers gathered better data about the Methuselah star, more precise measurements of its distance, its brightness, and its composition, and as they refined their models of how such a star ages, the estimated age came down and its uncertainty narrowed. The improved estimates brought the star's age within the age of the universe, once the uncertainties were properly accounted for, resolving the apparent contradiction. The star turned out to be extraordinarily old, one of the most ancient stars known, formed very early in the history of the universe, but not, after all, older than the universe itself. The paradox dissolved into a story of measurement refined. Yet even with the paradox resolved, the Methuselah star remains genuinely remarkable, for it is truly one of the oldest stars we know of, a survivor from the early ages of the cosmos. It formed not long, in cosmic terms, after the universe began, in an era when the universe was young and the elements from which later stars and planets would form were only beginning to be produced. Its composition reflects this ancient origin. It is poor in the heavier elements that accumulate in the universe over time as generations of stars produce them, marking it as a member of an early generation of stars. To look at the Methuselah star is to look at a living relic of the young universe, a star that has been shining since a time we can scarcely imagine, near the very beginning of cosmic history. The story of the Methuselah star is instructive about how science works. For a time, the numbers seem to point to an impossibility, and it would have been easy to sensationalize this as a star that broke the universe. But the apparent paradox was, in the end, a matter of measurement uncertainty, and as the measurements improved, the impossibility resolved into a merely extraordinary fact. This is often how genuine anomalies are handled, not by immediately overthrowing established understanding, but by refining measurements until either the anomaly dissolves or, occasionally, it proves robust and forces genuine revision. There is nonetheless a lingering wonder in the Methuselah star, in the very fact that we can measure the ages of stars at all and identify among them the ancient survivors of the cosmos's early days. Here is a star so old that our best measurements once seemed to place it beyond the age of everything, still shining now for us to study. That we can read from a point of light something of its immense age and its origin near the dawn of the universe is itself a kind of marvel. The Methuselah star, once seemingly older than time itself, stands now as one of the most ancient known inhabitants of the universe, a quiet elder among the stars. It should not, by the first measurements, have been possible for it to exist at all, older than the cosmos that made it. And in truth, it is not older than the universe. The paradox was ours, a matter of uncertain measurement. But the star remains a humbling reminder of the deep antiquity of the heavens, a survivor from the early universe still burning in our galaxy, carrying in its ancient light the memory of a time near the very beginning of all things. The wow signal On a summer night in 1977, a radio telescope in the United States, part of a program searching the skies for signals from beyond the Earth, recorded something that has never been fully explained and has haunted the search for extraterrestrial intelligence ever since. For 72 seconds, the telescope picked up a strong, narrow burst of radio waves coming from the direction of deep space, a signal that stood out sharply from the background, with exactly the sort of characteristics that scientists searching for alien transmissions had hoped to find. A few days later, an astronomer reviewing the printout of the telescope's data was so struck by the reading that he circled it and wrote a single word beside it in the margin, an exclamation of surprise. He wrote, "Wow." And so this mysterious burst from the sky became known forever as the WOW signal. To understand why this signal caused such excitement, one must understand what those searching for signs of extraterrestrial intelligence were looking for. The idea behind such searches is that an alien civilization, if it wished to communicate or simply broadcast, might send out radio signals, and that such deliberate signals might have distinctive features setting them apart from the natural radio noise of the cosmos. In particular, a narrowband signal, concentrated at a very specific frequency rather than spread across a wide range, would be a strong hint of an artificial origin, since natural cosmic sources tend to emit across broader ranges. The WOW signal was just such a narrowband signal, strong and concentrated, appearing at a frequency of particular interest to those in the search, and coming from the direction of deep space rather than from any known source on or near the Earth. The characteristics of the signal fit remarkably well with what one might expect from a genuine transmission from far away. Its strength rose and fell over the 72 seconds exactly as one would expect for a signal from a fixed point in space, as the rotation of the Earth swept the telescope's field of view across that point. The frequency, the narrowness, the strength, the behavior over time, all of it aligned suggestively with the profile of a signal that could, conceivably, have been sent by an intelligent source somewhere out in the galaxy. For those hoping to detect such a thing, it was a tantalizing, thrilling moment. And yet the WOW signal presents a profound frustration, one that has kept it a mystery rather than a triumph. Despite that single striking detection, the signal was never heard again. Astronomers pointed telescopes at the same region of sky, again and again, over the years that followed, listening for any repeat of the signal, any further transmission from that direction. They heard nothing. The signal appeared once, for 72 seconds, and then was gone, never to return, at least not in any detection that has been made since. This lack of repetition is a serious problem, because in science, a result that cannot be reproduced or confirmed is very difficult to interpret. A single unrepeatable event, however striking, cannot be firmly established as anything in particular. The WOW signal remains a one-time anomaly, real but unconfirmed, impossible to study further. Over the years, scientists have proposed various explanations for the WOW signal, seeking a natural or mundane origin that could account for it. Some suggestions have involved various astronomical phenomena or sources of interference, and one proposal pointed to the possibility that a passing comet, with its cloud of hydrogen gas, might have produced the signal, though this explanation has been disputed and is not widely accepted as settled. Other possibilities involve some form of terrestrial interference or a rare natural source. The difficulty is that, with only the single detection to work from and no possibility of further observation of the original event, none of these explanations can be confirmed or ruled out decisively. The signal sits in a frustrating limbo, unexplained but also unconfirmed as anything extraordinary. It is important not to overstate the WOW signal, and serious scientists are careful here. It is not proof of extraterrestrial intelligence, and the responsible position is that its origin remains unknown, with a natural explanation entirely possible even if none has been established. A single unrepeated signal, however suggestive, is not the reproducible evidence required to claim the detection of an alien transmission. At the same time, no fully satisfying mundane explanation has been confirmed either, which is precisely why the signal endures as a genuine mystery, neither dismissed nor validated. The enduring fascination of the WOW signal lies in this unresolved quality, in the fact that for 72 seconds a telescope recorded something that looked remarkably like what we might expect from a message across the stars, and then it vanished and never came again. It stands as a symbol of the whole search for life beyond the Earth, of the tantalizing possibility and the profound difficulty of that search, of how a single moment of apparent contact can arise and then dissolve into uncertainty, leaving us with a circled printout and a scrawled word of astonishment. It reminds us how much we do not know, and how the universe can offer us a fleeting, ambiguous glimpse of something and then fall silent. Whether the wow signal was a message from some distant civilization, a natural phenomenon we have not fully identified, or some form of interference, we may never know for certain. It should, if it were a genuine alien beacon, have repeated, and its silence since is telling. But it also should, if it were merely mundane, have a clear and confirmed explanation, and it does not. And so it remains, decades later, a single unexplained burst from the direction of the stars, 72 seconds of mystery, still listened for, still unrepeated, still holding its secret in the silence that followed. ʻOumuamua. In the autumn of 2017, astronomers spotted an object moving through our solar system that turned out to be unlike anything ever seen before. Careful tracking of its path revealed something astonishing about where it had come from and where it was going. This object was not bound to our sun, not orbiting it as the planets and comets and asteroids do. It was moving too fast and on the wrong kind of path, a trajectory that showed it had come from outside our solar system entirely, from the vast spaces between the stars, and that after its brief passage through our cosmic neighborhood it would leave again, heading back out into interstellar space, never to return. It was the first object from beyond our solar system ever observed passing through it, and astronomers named it ʻOumuamua, a Hawaiian word suggesting a scout or messenger reaching out from the distant past. The realization that ʻOumuamua was interstellar was itself momentous. For all of history, the objects we had studied in our solar system belonged to it, formed within it and bound to it. Here, for the first time, was a visitor from another star system, a piece of some other corner of the galaxy, passing through ours. It had traveled an immense distance across interstellar space, for an unimaginable span of time, before happening to pass near our sun, where our telescopes caught it during its fleeting visit. Just this fact, that we had detected an interstellar interloper, would have made ʻOumuamua a landmark discovery. But as astronomers scrambled to study it during the short window before it receded beyond reach, they found that the object was strange in several further ways that deepened the mystery. For one thing, ʻOumuamua appeared to have an unusual shape. Although it was too small and too far away to image directly in any detail, the way its brightness varied as it tumbled through space suggested that it was highly elongated, far longer than it was wide, an unusual and extreme shape compared to the more rounded asteroids and comets familiar in our solar system. It seemed to be a long, narrow object, tumbling end over end as it moved, and this peculiar elongated form was unlike the typical shapes we were used to seeing. The exact shape remained uncertain, with some analyses suggesting it might be elongated like a cigar and others favoring a flattened, disc-like form. But in either case it was strikingly unusual. The strangeness deepened further when astronomers studied ʻOumuamua's motion in detail. As it moved away from the sun, the object appeared to speed up slightly, to accelerate in a way that could not be fully accounted for by the gravity of the sun and planets alone. Some additional gentle push seemed to be acting on it. For comets, such non-gravitational acceleration is familiar and easily explained, caused by the way a comet releases gas and dust as it is warmed by the sun, the escaping material acting like a small thruster. But ʻOumuamua did not show the obvious signs of being a comet. Astronomers did not detect the clear cloud of gas and dust, the coma and tail, that an active comet typically displays. So the source of its slight acceleration was puzzling, an extra push without an obvious cause. These various oddities, the interstellar origin, the elongated shape, the unexplained acceleration without a visible comet tail, led to a range of proposed explanations. Most scientists sought natural ones. Perhaps ʻOumuamua was an unusual kind of comet after all, releasing some material in ways hard to detect, providing the gentle push. Perhaps it was made of unusual ices that could produce the acceleration through processes not immediately obvious. The general scientific view is that ʻOumuamua was most likely a natural object, albeit an unusual one, a fragment from another star system with properties that stretched but did not break our understanding. But the object's strangeness also prompted more speculative suggestions, most famously the proposal by a prominent astronomer that ʻOumuamua's unusual characteristics might, conceivably, be explained if it were not a natural object at all but an artifact of some kind, perhaps a piece of technology from another civilization, such as a thin structure pushed by starlight. This suggestion drew enormous attention and considerable controversy. Most scientists regarded it as highly speculative and favored natural explanations, emphasizing that unusual natural objects are far more likely than alien technology and that the evidence did not require such an extraordinary conclusion. The debate highlighted both the genuine puzzles ʻOumuamua presented and the importance of not leaping to extraordinary explanations when unusual but natural ones remain possible. The deep frustration of ʻOumuamua, much like the wow signal, is that we cannot go back and study it further. By the time its strangeness was appreciated, the object was already speeding away, soon beyond the reach of even our best telescopes. It is gone now, receding into interstellar space, and we are left with only the limited data gathered during its brief visit. We cannot resolve the questions it raised by looking again, because there is no longer anything to look at. The first interstellar visitor came, puzzled us, and departed. ʻOumuamua stands as a landmark and a mystery, the first known messenger from another star system to pass through our own, an object strange enough to provoke serious debate about its very nature. It should, perhaps, have been just an ordinary chunk of rock or ice, and most likely it was some unusual natural object. But its elongated shape and its unexplained acceleration gave it an air of genuine mystery, and its swift departure ensured that the mystery would endure. Somewhere out in the darkness between the stars, ʻOumuamua continues on its lonely way, the first visitor we ever caught sight of, carrying whatever secrets it holds back into the vast spaces from which it came. Tabby's star. Among the countless stars that astronomers monitor, one in particular caused such a stir that for a time it was seriously discussed, even by sober scientists, as a possible site of an alien megastructure. This star, officially designated by a catalogue number but widely known as Tabby's star after the astronomer who led the study of it, exhibited a pattern of dimming so strange, so irregular, and so difficult to explain that it defied all the ordinary expectations for how a star's brightness should behave. Something was blocking large amounts of the star's light in an erratic and unpredictable way, and for a while no one could say what. The mystery was strange enough that it captured the imagination of scientists and the public alike, and though the wildest explanation has fallen out of favor, the star's behavior remains genuinely puzzling. To understand why Tabby's star seems so strange, it helps to know how astronomers study the brightness of distant stars and what they usually find. By carefully measuring how a star's light rises and falls over time, astronomers can learn a great deal, and one of the most important things they detect this way is the presence of planets. When a planet passes in front of its star from our point of view, it blocks a small fraction of the star's light, causing a slight, regular, periodic dip in brightness that repeats each time the planet comes around in its orbit. These dips are typically small and, crucially, regular and predictable. This method has been used to discover many worlds orbiting distant stars, and astronomers know well what a normal planetary transit looks like, a small, clean, repeating dip. Tabby's star did not behave anything like this. Instead of small, regular dips, it showed dramatic and irregular drops in brightness, sometimes dimming by large amounts, far more than a planet passing in front would cause, and doing so in an erratic, non-repeating pattern with no clear regularity. Sometimes it would dim substantially, in ways and by amounts that did not fit the neat picture of a transiting planet at all. The dips were too large, too irregular, and too varied in shape to be explained by planets. Something was blocking a great deal of the star's light in a way that was messy, unpredictable, and unlike anything typically seen. This bizarre behavior demanded an explanation, and the ordinary answers did not seem to fit. The strangeness of the dimming led to a wide range of proposed explanations, some ordinary and some extraordinary. Astronomers considered various natural possibilities. Perhaps there was a large amount of dust or debris orbiting the star, blocking its light irregularly as it moved. Perhaps a swarm of comets, a great cloud of icy bodies, was passing in front of the star, their scattered and uneven distribution producing the messy dips. Perhaps there was some unusual activity within the star itself, or material in the space between us and the star, affecting how much of its light reached us. Each natural explanation had to grapple with the sheer oddness of the observations, the large size and irregularity of the dimming, and none fit perfectly at first, which is what kept the mystery alive and pushed some to consider more exotic ideas. It was in this context that the most spectacular suggestion arose, the idea that captured the world's imagination. Some speculated that the strange dimming might, conceivably, be caused by an enormous artificial structure built by an advanced alien civilization, a vast construction orbiting the star, perhaps intended to capture its energy, blocking its light as it passed. Such hypothetical megastructures had long been imagined as something a sufficiently advanced civilization might build around a star, and Tabby star's inexplicable dimming seemed, to some, to be exactly the sort of signature such a structure might produce. This possibility, however remote, was taken seriously enough to be discussed and investigated, and it propelled the star to fame, making it briefly one of the most talked about objects in the sky. As astronomers gathered more data and studied the star more closely, the evidence increasingly pointed away from the alien megastructure idea and toward more natural explanations, particularly ones involving dust. Detailed observations of how the star dimmed at different wavelengths or colors of light provided important clues, because a solid opaque structure would block all colors of light equally, whereas dust tends to block some colors more than others. The observations suggested that the dimming affected different colors differently, in a way more consistent with dust than with a solid structure, weakening the megastructure hypothesis considerably. The leading explanations came to focus on clouds or rings of dust and debris orbiting the star, blocking its light in irregular ways as the uneven material passed in front. Even so, the full story of Tabby's star is not entirely settled. While natural explanations involving dust are now favored, working out exactly what the dust is, where it came from, and why it produces such dramatic dimming continues to be a subject of study. The star also stands as an interesting episode in how science handles the extraordinary, taking even a startling possibility seriously enough to investigate while ultimately following the weight of the evidence. The tale of Tabby's star is, in the end, a lesson in curiosity and in restraint. It should, by the usual expectations, have dimmed in small regular dips like any star with planets, and instead it plunged in strange, irregular, dramatic drops that briefly made an alien construction seem worth discussing. The megastructure has receded into unlikelihood, and dust now seems the likelier culprit. But Tabby's star still flickers with an irregular light not fully explained, a reminder that the sky holds genuine puzzles, and that sometimes the strangest seeming behavior turns out to have a natural, if still elusive, cause. Ton 618. Far across the universe, at a distance so great that its light has traveled for much of the age of the cosmos to reach us, there lies an object that ranks among the most monstrous things known to exist. It is a black hole, But to call it merely a black hole hardly conveys its scale, for it belongs to a class so extreme that they are sometimes called ultramassive, dwarfing even the enormous black holes found at the centers of ordinary galaxies. This object, known by the catalogue designation to 618, is estimated to contain the mass of tens of billions of suns concentrated into a single black hole, making it one of the most massive black holes ever discovered. It is a genuine titan of the cosmos, an object of such staggering proportions that it strains the mind to comprehend. To appreciate what TN 618 is, one must first understand black holes and the range of sizes in which they come. A black hole is a region of space where matter has been compressed so densely, and gravity has become so overwhelmingly strong, that nothing, not even light itself, can escape from within a certain boundary. Black holes form in various ways and come in a great range of masses. There are those formed from the collapse of individual massive stars, containing perhaps a few times the mass of our Sun. And there are the supermassive black holes that lurk at the centers of galaxies, including our own, containing millions or even billions of times the mass of the Sun, grown huge over cosmic time. TN 618 belongs to the very largest end of this range, so massive that it stands out even among the giants, with an estimated mass of tens of billions of suns. We know about TN 618 not by seeing the black hole itself, for black holes emit no light and cannot be seen directly, but through the extraordinarily brilliant beacon that surrounds it. TN 618 is what astronomers call a quasar, one of the most luminous kinds of object in the entire universe. A quasar shines because the black hole at its heart is surrounded by a vast, swirling disk of matter falling inward, and as this matter spirals in toward the black hole, it is heated to tremendous temperatures by the immense forces involved, blazing with such intensity that it can outshine entire galaxies. It is this dazzling glow of superheated matter, streaming in toward the black hole, that we detect across the vast gulf of space, and from studying this light astronomers infer the presence and the staggering mass of the black hole that powers it. The scale of TN 618 is genuinely difficult to grasp. The boundary of a black hole, the point of no return beyond which nothing can escape, grows larger with the black hole's mass, and for an object as massive as TN 618, this boundary would be enormous, so vast that it would dwarf our entire solar system many times over, a region of no return larger than the orbits of all the planets around our Sun by a huge factor. Into this titanic maw, matter falls and is lost forever, while the surrounding disk blazes with the light of a quasar. That a single object, a single black hole, could hold the mass of tens of billions of suns and cast a shadow of no return larger than any familiar scale, is a testament to the extremes the universe is capable of producing. The existence of such ultramassive black holes raises deep questions about how they came to be, questions that astronomers continue to investigate. Growing a black hole to the mass of tens of billions of suns takes an enormous amount of matter and, one might think, an enormous amount of time, as the black hole feeds and grows over the ages. Yet quasars like TN 618 are seen at great distances, meaning we see them as they were long ago, relatively early in the history of the universe, which poses a challenge, for there seems to have been limited time for such gigantic black holes to grow so large so early. Understanding how the most massive black holes formed and grew to such sizes, and how they did so as quickly as they seem to have, is an active area of research, one of the genuine puzzles at the frontier of our understanding of the cosmos. TN 618 also serves as a humbling reminder of the sheer scale of the universe. Our Sun, which is vast beyond human scale and holds all the planets in its grip, is as nothing beside a black hole of tens of billions of solar masses. Our entire solar system would be swallowed many times over within the boundary of such an object. And TN 618 is but one of many enormous black holes scattered through the universe, powering brilliant quasars across the depths of space and time. There is a strange kind of awe in contemplating an object like TN 618, mixed with a sense of our own smallness. Here is a single black hole so massive that it challenges comprehension, detectable only through the blazing beacon of matter falling to its doom, sitting so far away that its light has crossed much of the observable universe to reach us. It has been there, feeding and shining, since long before the Earth existed. Ton 618 should, by any intuition drawn from our small corner of existence, be impossible, a single object holding the mass of tens of billions of suns. And yet it is real, out there across the vast reaches of space, one of the most massive things we know of, shining as a quasar with the light of a superheated disk spiraling into oblivion. It stands as a monument to the extremes of the cosmos, a reminder that reality, on the largest scales, dwarfs the boldest reaches of the human imagination. The Boötes void. When we look up at the night sky, the universe appears richly populated, scattered everywhere with stars and, beyond them, with galaxies in almost countless numbers. On the largest scales, the cosmos is woven into a great web, with galaxies gathered into clusters and strung along vast filaments, separated by regions of relative emptiness. But in the direction of the constellation Boötes, there lies a region of emptiness so vast, so profoundly barren of galaxies, that it stands out even against the ordinary voids of the universe. It is a tremendous, nearly empty bubble in space, hundreds of millions of light-years across, containing far fewer galaxies than a region of that staggering size should hold. It is called the Boötes void, and sometimes, aptly, the Great Nothing, and its sheer emptiness is a genuine cosmic puzzle. To understand the strangeness of the Boötes void, one must appreciate the ordinary structure of the universe on the largest scales. Galaxies are not spread evenly through space. They cluster together, drawn by gravity into groups and clusters, and these in turn are arranged along immense filaments and sheets, forming a cosmic web with denser regions and emptier regions between them. Emptier regions, called voids, are a normal feature of this structure, expected parts of the cosmic web where galaxies are sparse. So the existence of voids in itself is not surprising. What makes the Boötes void remarkable is its extraordinary size combined with its extreme emptiness, a void far larger and far more barren than the typical gaps in the cosmic web, a bubble of near-nothingness on a scale that challenges explanation. The dimensions of the Boötes void are difficult to comprehend. It spans a distance of hundreds of millions of light-years, an expanse so vast that light itself, moving at the fastest speed there is, would take hundreds of millions of years to cross it. Within this enormous volume, one would expect, based on the average density of galaxies in the universe, to find a great many galaxies, thousands of them, filling the space as they do elsewhere. Instead, the Boötes void contains only a small fraction of that expected number, a scattering of galaxies where there should be a multitude. It is as though a huge region of the universe was somehow left nearly empty, a great hollow in the cosmic web far larger and more vacant than the ordinary voids around it. There is a striking way that astronomers have described the emptiness of the Boötes void, one that conveys its scale in human terms. If our own galaxy, the Milky Way, were located in the center of the Boötes void, we would have been almost entirely unaware, for much of our history, that other galaxies even existed. The nearest neighboring galaxies would have been so far away, across the vast emptiness, that they would have been extremely difficult to detect, and we might have believed for a long time that our galaxy was alone in an empty cosmos. This gives a vivid sense of just how isolated a galaxy within the void would be, surrounded by an immense gulf of near-nothingness stretching in all directions, its neighbors lost beyond the reach of easy observation. How could such an enormous and empty region come to exist? This is the genuine puzzle the Boötes void presents, and astronomers have worked to understand it within our broader picture of how the universe's structure formed. The cosmic web, with its clusters and filaments and voids, is understood to have grown over cosmic time from tiny variations in the density of matter in the early universe, with gravity gradually pulling matter together in some regions and leaving others empty, amplifying the initial differences into the vast structures we see. Voids are a natural outcome of this process, but the exceptional size and emptiness of the Boötes void pushes at the edges of what this process would ordinarily be expected to produce, raising questions about how such an extreme void could form. One idea that has been considered is that the Boötes void might have formed from the merging of several smaller voids, coming together over cosmic time into one great void, much as small soap bubbles can merge into a larger one. In this picture, the extreme emptiness is the result of several ordinary voids combining, and the scattering of galaxies found within the void, some of which appear to be arranged in a way that might hint at the boundaries of the smaller voids that merged, could be a trace of this history. This possibility offers a way to understand the Great Void as an outcome of ordinary cosmic processes taken to an extreme, rather than as something requiring an entirely new explanation, though the full story of its formation remains a subject of study. Whatever its precise origin, the Boötes void stands as a striking reminder of how much emptiness the cosmos contains. We often think of space as full, populated with stars and galaxies, but on the largest scales, much of the universe is void, and the Boötes void is emptiness on a scale that beggars the imagination, a hollow so large and so barren that a galaxy at its heart would find itself in near total isolation. There is something almost meditative in contemplating the great nothing, this vast bubble of near emptiness in the direction of Boötes. It reminds us that the universe is not only a place of stars and galaxies, but also of enormous silences and voids. It should perhaps be full, by our everyday sense that space is populated, and yet here is a region hundreds of millions of light-years across that is nearly empty. The Boötes void stands as a monument to the emptiness woven into the universe alongside its fullness, a vast and quiet nothing stretching across an expanse of space almost beyond comprehension. The Fermi paradox. The universe is unimaginably vast and unimaginably old. Our galaxy alone contains hundreds of billions of stars, and beyond it lie hundreds of billions of other galaxies, each with their own countless stars, many of them, we now know, accompanied by planets. Given so many stars, so many worlds, and so much time, it seems almost inevitable that life should have arisen many times over, and that among all those life forms, some should have developed intelligence and technology, perhaps long before we did. The universe should, by this reasoning, be teeming with civilizations. And yet, when we look and listen, we find only silence. We have found no clear sign of any other civilization, no messages, no evidence, nothing. This stark contradiction between the apparent likelihood of abundant alien life and the total absence of any evidence for it is called the Fermi paradox, and it is one of the most profound and haunting puzzles we face. The paradox is often summed up in a simple, piercing question, said to have been posed by the physicist Enrico Fermi in the course of a lunchtime conversation about extraterrestrial life. Considering the vast number of stars and the great age of the universe, and the seeming likelihood that intelligent life should have arisen and spread, he is said to have asked, in effect, where is everybody? If the universe should be full of civilizations, some far older and more advanced than ours, some perhaps having had ample time to spread across the galaxy, then why do we see no trace of them? Why is the sky silent, the cosmos apparently empty of the signs of other minds? The question is simple to ask and profoundly difficult to answer, and the tension it names cuts deep. The force of the paradox comes from the numbers and the timescales involved. The galaxy is old enough that a civilization arising even a modest span of time before us would have had an enormous head start, potentially long enough to spread across much of the galaxy or at least leave detectable signs. And with so many stars and potentially habitable worlds, it seems statistically likely that life and intelligence should have arisen elsewhere, perhaps many times. Put these together, and the expectation of a universe full of detectable civilizations seems reasonable. The silence we actually find is therefore genuinely puzzling. Many possible resolutions to the Fermi paradox have been proposed, and they span a wide and fascinating range, each carrying different implications for our own place and future. One broad family of explanations suggests that intelligent, technological life is far rarer than the raw numbers might imply, that some step or steps in the long path from lifeless matter to a technological civilization are extraordinarily difficult and unlikely, so that despite the vast number of worlds, civilizations like ours are exceedingly rare, perhaps nearly unique. In this view, the emptiness is real because the emergence of life and intelligence is far harder than we assume, and we may be alone, or nearly so, in a way that makes our own existence extraordinarily precious and fragile. Another sobering family of explanations centers on the idea of a great filter, some barrier that prevents civilizations from arising or from surviving long enough to become detectable or to spread. This filter might lie in our past, in some improbable step already behind us, which would suggest that the hard part is over and we have made it through. Or, more disturbingly, the filter might lie in our future, in some tendency for technological civilizations to destroy themselves or to be destroyed before they can spread, so that civilizations regularly arise and then vanish before they can make lasting contact. This darker possibility raises unsettling questions about our own long-term prospects, hinting that the silence might be a warning about the fate that tends to befall civilizations like ours. Still other explanations propose that the universe may indeed contain other civilizations, but that we have not detected them for reasons that leave the door to alien life open. Perhaps such civilizations are simply too far away, separated from us by distances so vast that contact or detection is extraordinarily difficult. Perhaps they are not communicating in ways we can detect, or not at the times we happen to be listening, or using technologies utterly unlike our own. Perhaps advanced civilizations tend to become quiet, or to lose interest in broadcasting, or to exist in forms we would not recognize. Some have even suggested, more speculatively, that other civilizations might deliberately avoid contact with a young civilization like ours. Each of these ideas offers a way that abundant alien life could coexist with the silence we observe, though none can be confirmed. The Fermi paradox is so compelling precisely because we do not know which, if any, of these explanations is correct, and because each carries such profound implications. If intelligent life is vanishingly rare, then we are among the most precious things in the cosmos. If a great filter lies ahead, then our future may be perilous in ways we should heed. If the universe is full of civilizations we simply cannot yet detect, then we stand on the threshold of perhaps the greatest discovery in history. The silence we hear is a kind of cosmic inkblot, and what we read into it reflects our deepest hopes and fears about our destiny. The Fermi paradox remains genuinely unresolved. The universe should, by one line of reasoning, be full of the signs of other minds, and yet it appears silent. Whether that silence means we are alone, or endangered, or simply unable as yet to hear the voices that are out there, we do not know. It is a mystery written across the whole vast sky, and it stands as one of the deepest and most haunting puzzles we have ever confronted, waiting still for an answer. The Boltzmann brain. Here is one of the strangest ideas that serious physics has ever been forced to take seriously, an idea so bizarre that it functions less as a theory to be believed than as a deep and troubling puzzle, a warning sign that something in our reasoning may be incomplete. It goes like this. Under certain assumptions about the universe, it may be more likely, statistically, for a single conscious brain to pop into existence, fully formed, complete with false memories and the impression of a whole surrounding world, as a random fluctuation, than for an entire ordinary universe like the one we think we inhabit to arise. Such a spontaneously appearing, self-aware brain is called a Boltzmann brain, and the disturbing possibility it raises is that you yourself might be one, a fleeting consciousness assembled by chance, your entire sense of a real past and a real world an illusion. To understand where this strange idea comes from, one must consider the physics of randomness and probability applied to the universe as a whole, over vast stretches of time. In physics, systems left to themselves tend toward disorder, but random fluctuations can, given enough time, produce temporary pockets of order out of disorder, just as, in principle, the random motion of air molecules could by pure chance briefly gather them all into one corner of a room, though this is astronomically unlikely. Over sufficiently vast, perhaps infinite, stretches of time, even extremely improbable arrangements of matter could occasionally arise by chance fluctuation. And here is the unsettling step. A single brain, with all its complexity, is far simpler and far smaller than an entire universe. So if things can arise by random fluctuation, a lone brief brain, complete with a moment of experience and a set of false memories, would be vastly more probable to appear by chance than a whole vast, ordered universe. The reasoning then takes a vertiginous turn. If, under certain cosmological assumptions, the universe persists for an immense or infinite duration and can give rise to fluctuations, then over that vast span, spontaneously appearing brains might vastly outnumber ordinary observers like us who arise through the normal history of a universe, born into a real world with a real past. If that were so, then a randomly chosen conscious observer would be far more likely to be one of the countless fluctuation brains than one of the comparatively rare observers embedded in a genuine, orderly universe. And that leads to the deeply disquieting question: how do you know that you are not such a brain? How can you be sure that your memories are real, that the world around you exists, that you are an ordinary observer in a real universe rather than a momentary fluctuation with the mere impression of all these things? It is important to be clear that essentially no physicist actually believes that we are Boltzmann brains, and that the idea is not put forward as a serious description of reality. Rather, the Boltzmann brain functions as what is sometimes called a reductio, a way of testing our theories by following their assumptions to an absurd or self-undermining conclusion. If a particular set of cosmological assumptions leads to the prediction that most observers should be Boltzmann brains, then that set of assumptions is regarded as suspect, because it undermines itself. For if you were a Boltzmann brain, your reasoning and memories, including the very science that led you to the conclusion, would be the products of random fluctuation and could not be trusted. So the idea does real work, serving as a check on cosmological theories. Cosmologists seek models in which ordinary observers like us are the typical ones and our memories and reasoning can be trusted, and treat any model predicting a universe full of fluctuation brains as flawed. The Boltzmann brain also touches on deep and ancient questions about the reliability of our knowledge and the nature of reality. Questions that philosophers have pondered in various forms for a very long time. How do we know that the world around us is real, that our memories are trustworthy, that we are what we take ourselves to be? The Boltzmann brain gives these old questions a strange new physical form, suggesting that under certain cosmological assumptions, the worry that our experience might be an illusion is not merely a philosophical fancy but something that emerges from physics itself. It connects the abstract puzzles of skepticism to concrete questions about the structure and history of the cosmos, giving a vertiginous physical edge to the ancient doubt about whether things are as they seem. There is something both dizzying and clarifying about contemplating the Boltzmann brain. Dizzying, because it briefly opens the terrifying possibility that everything you know could be a fleeting illusion assembled by chance in a momentary fluctuation. Clarifying, because we reject the conclusion not because we can prove we are not such brains, but because accepting it would undermine all reasoning, including the reasoning that led there. The very absurdity of the idea becomes a tool for keeping our theories sane. The Boltzmann brain stands, then, as one of the strangest things that should perhaps not exist even as an idea, and yet it does, lurking at the intersection of physics, probability, and philosophy, a thought experiment that no one believes but that no one can quite dismiss. It should be impossible to seriously entertain that you might be a momentary brain fluctuating out of the void, and indeed we do not truly entertain it as fact. But the fact that certain assumptions about the cosmos lead there, and that ruling it out requires care, makes the Boltzmann brain a genuine and useful strangeness, a bizarre guardian at the edges of our theories, reminding us to build a picture of the universe in which our own minds can be trusted. Vacuum decay. We come, at the last, to perhaps the most quietly terrifying idea in all of physics, a possibility so strange and so absolute that it makes every other catastrophe seem modest by comparison. It is the notion that the empty space of the universe, the vacuum itself, might not be truly stable, that it might be resting in a state that is not the lowest possible, and that at any moment, somewhere, it could tip into a lower state, releasing a bubble of true vacuum that would expand outward at the speed of light, destroying everything it touched and rewriting the very laws of physics as it went. This is called vacuum decay, and while it is likely nothing to lose sleep over, it stands as one of the most profound and unsettling possibilities that our understanding of physics has ever raised. To grasp this idea, one must first shed the ordinary notion that empty space is simply nothing. In modern physics, the vacuum, the emptiness between and within things, is not truly empty but is a physical entity with properties, a kind of background state of reality with a certain energy associated with it. This vacuum state can, in principle, exist at different energy levels, and the key question is whether the vacuum we inhabit is in the lowest possible energy state, the truly stable one, or in a state that merely seems stable but is actually higher than the true minimum, a so-called false vacuum. If our vacuum is a false vacuum, then it is like a ball resting in a small dip partway down a hill, appearing stable, but with a lower and truly stable state existing beyond a barrier, waiting. If our universe sits in such a false vacuum, then it is metastable, seemingly stable but capable of transitioning to the lower, true vacuum state. This transition would begin at some point, where a tiny bubble of true vacuum would form through a rare quantum event, and this bubble, being a more stable state, would then expand. Once formed, it would grow outward, its walls sweeping through space at nearly the speed of light, converting the false vacuum around it into true vacuum as it went, arriving with no warning at the very moment its effects did. What would happen within the bubble of true vacuum is where the idea becomes most profound and most absolute. In the true vacuum, the fundamental properties and laws of physics might be different from those in our present false vacuum. The forces of nature, the properties of particles, the very rules that allow atoms and matter and everything we know to exist, could be altered. In such a changed physics, the structures of our world, atoms, molecules, matter itself, might not be able to exist at all. So the expanding bubble would not merely destroy things in the ordinary sense of blowing them apart. It would replace the very laws that make our kind of existence possible, engulfing everything in a region where reality operates by different rules entirely, rules under which we and everything we know could not exist. Because the bubble wall would move at nearly the speed of light, it would arrive without any possible warning, and nothing could outrun it or defend against it. It is, in this sense, the most absolute catastrophe imaginable, an ending that would be instant, total, and without any possibility of survival or even awareness. It is important, having painted this stark picture, to place it in proper perspective and not to be unduly alarmed. Whether our vacuum is truly a false vacuum at all remains uncertain, and even if it is, the spontaneous formation of such a bubble is thought to be extraordinarily unlikely on any timescale relevant to us, potentially requiring spans of time vastly longer than the current age of the universe. This is not a danger looming over our daily lives. It is a possibility that emerges from our theories about the deep nature of the vacuum, a subject of genuine scientific study, but not a catastrophe we have any reason to fear in our own time. What makes vacuum decay so fascinating, despite its remoteness, is what it reveals about the nature of reality and the possible fate of the universe. It suggests that the stability we take for granted, the constancy of the laws of physics, the reliable existence of matter and space, might not be absolutely guaranteed, that the very foundation of reality might rest on a state that is stable only for now, only provisionally, with a deeper and different state lying beyond a barrier. It reframes the vacuum, the emptiness we think of as the most inert and featureless thing of all, as something with a hidden structure and a possible instability, something that could, in principle, transform utterly. The empty space around us becomes, in this light, not a passive backdrop but a physical state whose stability is a genuine question. Vacuum decay stands, then, as a fitting close to a journey through the strangest things that should not exist, for it is the strangeness of the very ground of existence itself. It should be, one feels, impossible for empty space to harbor such a possibility. And yet our best physics raises the genuine question of whether the emptiness itself is only provisionally stable, whether reality rests on a foundation that is not quite final. It is almost certainly nothing to fear, but it remains a profound reminder that even the emptiness, even the stability of the laws of nature, even the ground beneath all things, may be stranger and less certain than we ever imagined.